Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to foot.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a Tuesday matinee edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Divular, of course.
Hello.
It just occurred to me watching that intro. Is it in poor taste to have a dead man on the intro? Like, could we do sound drop? Like, what if he dies? We're going to keep him on.
Biden?
Yeah.
Well, we have Nick working on this.
That's true.
Yeah,
right?
I got to reach out to him.
For purposes of taste, yeah, I might have to edit that out.
We're going to refresh this. I mean, you saw an example of my taste with my Scott Adams tweets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm not going to...
I'm kidding. We don't have to take it out. He's a president.
That tweet got me threatened.
Yeah, well,
I got threatened over that tweet.
Hey, you could be on a dollar bill if you die, right? If you're a president and you die. Well, they should put it, why haven't we come up with
now
new
you don't have to
dollar
wait.
bills?
You just put your face on a meme coin.
Exactly. Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But you would think, they would have a different bill, They should come out with like a $7 bill and put a president on there. Why not?
Sure.
They should keep doing that. Who's the most recent president to be on currency?
To be added?
Yeah. Is it Roosevelt?
Oh, gosh. Probably Kennedy. Probably Kennedy, because he was put on the 50-cent piece.
What's he on?
They don't make them anymore.
Yeah. That's right. Interesting. All right. I buy that. I'll take that. Kennedy. Yeah, they should put new presidents on bills now. I think that's something they should get going again. Great crowd in here to start things off. Everybody, thanks very much for being here today. Got some generous super chats registered as well before the show from Truth Seeker. Thanks, Truth Seeker. We'll get to those after this first segment since they are relevant. But we got 496 strong in the YouTube chat to start things off. 312 strong over on Rumble. So smash that like button, smash that follow button over there, smash that subscribe button wherever you are. We got quite a lot to get to today, so we are going to jump right on in here. As we all know, former President Joe Biden has prostate cancer, and we hardly ever cover health-related stuff on the show because, I just don't want to be on the hook for someone's health decision. I don't want to influence what you do with your health. If I give a wrong take about Ukraine, unless the Secretary of State is watching the show, it's not going to hurt anybody. With health, I tend to stay away. So in this case, though, we do have to inform you what a PSA test actually is. The prostate-specific antigen test. It tests for activities in the prostate. See, you can see I'm a real expert. Test for certain activities. See what's going on. What they do is they take your prostate and they see what the hell is going on. That's what they do. They see what the hell is going on in your prostate. So prostate-specific antigen, or PSA, is a protein produced by normal as well as malignant cells of the prostate gland. Both prostate cancer and several benign conditions, particularly benign prostate hyperplasia, or BPH, that makes your, what not work right. I hear that. And prostatitis can cause PSA levels in the blood to rise. So the PSA test measures the level of PSA in the blood, and this test is used in several different ways, blah, blah, blah. A high reading indicates a possibility of prostate cancer. It doesn't indicate a positive, but a high reading indicates that you're supposed to get more work done to look into, like I said, what the hell is going on. So in general, PSA level above 4 is considered abnormal and may result in a recommendation for prostate biopsy. All of this to say, it is quite strange that a man of Biden's age, undergoing as many physicals as you have to go when you run for the presidency and when you serve in the White House, that you would learn about prostate cancer for the first time in its advanced stage, quote unquote, 4 months after leaving office, which today marks the 4-month mark since Biden has left office. That seems almost impossible to believe. In fact, literally impossible to who? Zeke Emanuel. You could not find a more Democrat-friendly doctor than this. And even Zeke Emanuel seems to say there's absolutely no way that Biden did not have this prostate cancer for years, dating back, of course, not just into his presidency, but to the beginning of his presidency.
Likely, if this prostate cancer has spread to the bone, that he could have had it for up to a decade, but certainly it's likely. Would it be fair to say it's likely to have had this for at least several years?
Oh, more than several years. You don't get prostate cancer.
So again, I just want to stop you. So this is not speculation. If you have prostate cancer that is spread to the bone, then he's most certainly, you were saying, had it when he was president of the United States.
Oh, yeah. He did not develop it in the last 100, 200 days. He had it while he was president. He probably had it at the start of his presidency in 2021. Yes, that I don't think there's any disagreement about that.
And I'm just curious again, if your doctor to a president of the United States that is a male, that is an older man, would a prostate test, and again, we're just talking about a PSA screening, a blood test that you could do along with all the other blood tests.
We're not talking about sticking your finger anywhere, just so you know. We're just talking about a blood test. That's all I want to talk about here. This is a morning show.
Cut from here. And if you don't like it, F you. This is the best Biden prostate ever. He used to pee on my shoes regularly.
Yeah.
Not a drop for the last 3 years.
All right. Yeah, and a solid stream when he does it on purpose.
It's not even that it would be intrusive. Would this not be one of the first tests that you would conduct as a White House doctor?
If you're a White House doctor in this situation, I think you would certainly discuss it with the president and talk about the pros and cons. I think if you then ask, well, if President Biden says, well, if I'm your father, which patients often do, you know, what would you recommend? I think the fact is that most White House doctors would recommend getting the test. And again, the evidence is, look at President Obama, President Bush, younger than President Biden, and they both got the test.
I get the test every day. I wake up, first thing happens, doctor sticks it right up my ass every single day. I say, check my prostate, doc, make sure I'm good to go, and I'm good to go. It's irresponsible otherwise. You can't leave anything to chance nowadays.
It's Dr. Svetlana. She doesn't just check, she massages it.
Yeah, right, exactly. I said, check it a little more, Toots.
She puts on, I never saw a nurse outfit like that. It's rubber. It's very unusual, but it's clean. It's clean like that. Everything just rubs right off with a paper towel.
Exactly. So that's Zeke Emanuel of the Emanuel family. Same Emanuel family as, of course, Hollywood super agent Ari Emanuel, and now apparent presidential hopeful Rahm Emanuel. That's one of the architects of the ACA.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So he is as inside the tent as possible. Yeah, of course. Well, there's going to be a doctor in the family. Yeah. He is, of course, as inside the Democrat tent as you can get. So if he's saying, this goes back years, it obviously goes back years. Now, here's someone who you might find a little more credible because he's less of a partisan than Zeke Emanuel. Here's urologist David Schusterman on News Nation. He talks a lot about similar things that Zeke just talked about, so we won't play that because it would be redundant. However, the anchor here asks a very important question. His answer is even more important, so let's take a look at this.
Been made of his apparent cognitive decline. Is there a possibility that either the cancer itself or any treatments he was undergoing in secret could affect cognitive function of a person?
Okay, so Zeke Emanuel said, yeah, this cancer dates back to at least 2021, which means he's likely had cancer the entire time he was in the White House. Could that have affected his state of mind or the treatment for that cancer? Is there something about treating that cancer that could have affected his state of mind? Listen to this answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what happens is when prostate cancer becomes, like, say you get treated for prostate cancer and then the prostate cancer recurs, what you would do is you would start someone on a kind of a testosterone blocking hormone such as Lupron, and because Lupron acts to lower your testosterone, it gives you kind of like symptoms of depression, lower energy, fatigue. So there's a lot of things that go with being on Lupron treatment. So Lupron is a class of medicine that just castrates, chemically castrates someone so that the prostate cancer doesn't spread.
So on the bright side,
And
he was
so that they
basically
could
the
swim
first
against
woman
women.
president. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the bright side, then, Biden was probably the first woman president, at least the closest we've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, he
Indeed.
could have qualified for an NCAA match.
Yeah.
In his current
Exactly.
condition.
And so Lupron was likely used in Joe
Understand.
Biden.
So to be very clear, you believe he was silently, secretly battling this for at least 5 years?
Well, I think that's yet to be seen. I mean, it would be very surprising, like I said earlier, for him to have prostate cancer at least in 9 spread to bone without without being neglected medically. So the fact that he was seen medically every year, it's just very surprising. I mean, his PSA must be over 50 at this point, if not a lot more, just because of bone mets, is a sign that it's very aggressive and spreading to other parts of the body. So I think there's definitely evidence that he probably knew about this for a while.
Okay, so once again, 4 or above is the level of concern. This doctor is saying he must have a PSA of over 50 now. You're telling me that they didn't know about this until I knew as soon as they said it's an aggressive form of cancer, that means they're lying and that he had it years back. The reason they say it's aggressive is to imply that, hey, this just sprung up and spread to his bones in 4 months, which from everything we're seeing and reading, that's impossible. Aside from that, here's Joe Biden back in 2022, perhaps letting the cat out of the bag that he had cancer.
It was a 4-lane highway that was accessible. My mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening. You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer.
That's why I and so many other people who've grown up with have cancer.
Oh, snap. I didn't even see that.
In 2022.
No. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. And why can't, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
So, of course,
damn.
When you talk as much nonsense as Joe Biden, it's easy to write that off as a gaffe, but it looks, turns out that was not a gaffe. Turns out that was probably him telling the truth by accident.
So the rumor that Scott Adams, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Joe Biden all went to the same leather bar that had been a former uranium storage plant, not true?
Yeah, right, exactly.
No truth to that?
I guess not. Apparently Delaware is where you catch it. But hey, folks, all of this is in the past, according to Hakeem Jeffries. Democrats aren't going to look back.
We got to think about tomorrow.
Are going to look forward. That's right. Democrats are all about looking forward. So here he is on this whole thing.
Biden is going to meet this moment with the courage and resilience that he's consistently shown. Seems to me entirely inappropriate that at this moment in time, when President Biden is dealing with a serious and aggressive form of cancer, there are Republicans who are peddling conspiracy theories and want us to look backward at a time when they actually are taking health care away from the American people. No, as House Democrats, we're going to look forward. They literally are trying to take health care away from millions of Americans at this very moment in the dead of night. And Republicans want to fan the flames of conspiracy theories at this moment? No, thank you.
It's not a conspiracy theory, my man. This is pretty obvious. This is about as obvious as it gets. And this is a major scandal.
That was painful. That was painful.
Pretty bad. This is a major scandal. A major scandal. You know, as we're going to get into in the B part of this segment, you know, medical checks are a routine part of the process of running for president and being vetted for office, because the public has an interest in knowing that the person who they vote for is going to have the capacity to serve, and the person who they vote for is going to be making the kinds of decisions that the public entrusts the president with when they vote for the president. What did we keep hearing throughout Biden's presidency? This guy's not calling the shots, and we didn't know who was. Like, we certainly Kamala wasn't calling the shots. Obviously, we saw from the campaign she turned in, Kamala doesn't decide fucking anything, right? So who was it? Who was it? Sure, you Blinken. Sure, you have what's the other guy? What's the guy? I always forget. Jake Sullivan. Yeah. Those are two, but from what we've been hearing, it was a lot of these millennial staffers who were shaping the information that reached the president. The president was isolated from a lot of his team because they didn't want it revealed just how much of a non-entity he was. And so who is running the country? This is a matter of democracy. This whole thing was done to shut the American people out of the democratic process. This is why so many of the attacks on Trump as this existential threat to democracy fell flat over the course of the campaign. Now, look, I'm not happy to admit, but I will. I'm certainly not happy to admit, but I will admit that Trump's performance so far has validated a lot of what liberals have been warning about him. I'll grant you that. I can't not grant you that. I got to call it fair. But the reason why those didn't land is because the propping up of Joe Biden, forget about 2024, the propping up of Joe Biden in 2019 into 2020 on the eve of Super Tuesday was so obviously an effort to install this man. Yeah, exactly. Just to install this man to beat Donald Trump, because they had to get Trump out, but they also had to keep Bernie out. And they figured he was the only one who could beat both Bernie in a primary and Donald Trump. Who did they pick? Kamala Harris, which is who the deep state has wanted to be president since election night of 2016. And so clearly the plan was to push him over the finish line in 2024 and then have her take over right about now.
Right.
And shut out of this process entirely was going to be the American people, who were kept in the dark about all of this through his first term, through campaign season, if they had their way, if he didn't melt down on that fateful June night. And we would have now had President Kamala Harris, which was their plan all along. That was obviously their plan all along. So it's a major scandal, the fact that they covered this up. And this was clearly a systematic cover-up, one of the most involved cover-ups ever, because most of the time when you talk about conspiracy theory, the number, as someone who's dabbled in conspiracy theories for over 20 years now, the number one thing people always ask you when you float a conspiracy theory is, well, look at how many people would have to be involved. Is it really reasonable to think that many people would have had to be involved? And in this case, it would require a lot of people to be involved. The doctors surely had to be involved. I'm sorry. Like, the doctors were covering this up. You cannot convince me otherwise. It's not possible. Look at Zeke Emanuel. Zeke Emanuel, the most partisan blue MAGA doctor you could possibly get, says, yeah, no, he had this since 2021 at least, likely back even further.
Yeah, well, if you look at the faces of the Morning Joe panel while he's saying that, it's very deer in the headlights
Yeah.
because most of them probably knew. And you also have to remember going back to what we saw come out with Donna Brazile and the Clinton campaign, it's as bad as you think it is in terms of the connection between these media outlets and the DNC. That look on their faces, oh shit, here come the phone calls.
Right.
Here come the phone calls. They're going to, but I don't think the DNC can twist their arms like that because they're so out of power. They're so cut off at the knees. How much pressure can they really exert on these media outlets, which at this point, partly because they followed this party off a cliff, are fighting for their lives, literally with MSNBC, which is on the verge of not even existing.
Right.
So I don't think they're able to control their sycophants quite the way they used to be able to. But yes, obviously, everybody knew he was losing his mind, and people like us and many others said, well, the plan is to install Kamala. Before we knew any of this, before the debate meltdown, that was the theory. There's no way that anyone with any sense, not that there is a surfeit of that in the Democratic Party, but no one with two brain cells could think this guy's going to serve a second term. So at that point, you have to say, what are they thinking? Well, okay, they've wanted Kamala. They know they can't actually win an election with Kamala. So this is the way they're going to get around the voters to get in Kamala. And then that debate performance crushed their little dreams. But now, yeah, man, I mean, I don't see how the Republicans don't announce an investigation. And that's going to turn up a lot of stuff because, yes, everyone in that White House was complicit. Now the press is running away from it, and they'll be able to deny it a little more effectively because how do you prove they knew? But the people in the White House who dealt with him day to day, and when you really get into who knew he had cancer, this is big. This is big. I mean, everyone in his family, presumably, including Jill Biden, who was probably the de facto president, particularly during the last couple of years. We've seen footage of Jill Biden running cabinet meetings. First ladies don't run. Even Hillary did not run cabinet meetings. So why were they doing that? No, man. And this is why I said we talked about it last night. The stuff that Trump is doing is going to blow up in the face of the American people so badly that even with this, you can't say there won't be any kind of gains in the midterms. I suspect the midterms are going to be more like the red wave that didn't happen, where, yeah, they gained a little bit, but nowhere near what people expected them to. I think that's what the midterms are going to be because they're so awful. They're so awful, and God knows what's going to come out about this.
They're awful. They're awful. And what that doctor said, if the therapy was what was behind his decline, because his decline was pretty sudden. I mean, he seemed more or less with it when he left office in 2016. And then by 2019, he was a completely different person.
That can happen just like cognitively.
It can. But in a case like Parkinson's, I know my mother has Parkinson's. It was slow. It was gradual. It didn't happen that quickly. Now, granted, he was not in the public eye from 2016 to 2019. We don't know what happened there. But what this doctor is saying is that when you undergo that kind of hormone therapy, it can affect balance, falls, they say, and it can affect your cognitive function, both of which clearly happen. And so not only was there a cover-up as to just his overall health and longevity, could he serve 1 or 2 terms, but this obviously affected his performance in a major way to such an extent that it became common to acknowledge amongst the general public that, yeah, he's president in name only. And that's a huge scandal. It's a major, major scandal. And the other thing I will add to this is, you know, once a petty Nixonian asshole, always a petty Nixonian asshole, an asshole in sickness and in health. I have no doubt they leaked this to the press on the eve of Jake Tapper's book coming out for a sort of double-pronged reason. One, they kind of scooped Jake Tapper. Oh, you got all these bombshells in your book? How's this? I have cancer. Does it say that in your stupid little book? I bet your book seems kind of shitty now.
Yeah, you missed that.
Right.
You did
exactly.
all this
you missed that
research
one.
and you missed that.
All this inside information and you missed that one. Ha ha. But also, they're hoping that it'll win him over some sympathy. It's won him over a little, but only a little. A very, very little. Because people are
if
rightfully
anything, I
just
think it's
furious about this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the prominent reaction.
Yeah.
You know, you got a few libs. I mean, we saw it with your tweet. The libs tried to circle the wagon for a second, and if you notice, they shut up real fast when once they read the room.
Right.
That the overall reaction was not going to be, oh, poor Joe Biden. That the overall reaction was going to be, not only did this guy try to run for president with half a brain, or the people around him put him in that position, but now you're telling us he had cancer that he didn't reveal.
Right.
That overwhelms any effort to all of a sudden change the narrative about who Joe Biden was as a political figure.
Exactly. All right, so we're talking about the Joe Biden prostate cancer cover-up here, and I want to take you back in time to February of 2024 when he got this report from the White House doctor. Biden is a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male, his doctor says, after physical. So this is one of the last physicals he had before leaving office. This is February 2024. Joe Biden is fit to continue his presidential responsibilities without any exemptions or accommodations, the White House physician said Wednesday after conducting the president's annual physical. Biden is a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency, Dr. Kevin O'Connor said in a summary of the president's health. The results of the routine examination carry extra significance this year as Biden seeks to tamp down concerns about whether he is physically and mentally capable of serving another 4 years in the White House. Wow. To read this a year later, huh?
Yeah.
The Democrat has weathered relentless attacks about his age and fitness. He has weathered relentless attacks about his age and fitness from his political opponents, especially Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump, who will turn 78 in June. You can see the very subtle editorializing of an NBC outlet. Yes, Donald Trump, who's also old, is making a big deal about Joe Biden's age and health, even though he's perfectly healthy. And by healthy, we mean he has prostate cancer in his bones.
Yeah, when you're talking about CNBC, what this tells you is that the degenerate Wall Street gamblers at that time felt that their futures were in better hands with Biden or Harris or whatever they came up with.
Yes, exactly. That bias certainly reflected here. Despite their closeness in age, polls show voters are less concerned about Trump's fitness than Biden's. How unreasonable of them. Earlier in February, a Department of Justice special counsel investigating Biden over his handling of classified documents described the president in a report as an elderly man with a poor memory. Well, we had some revelations on that front, too, this week. That's why I thought it was worth revisiting this article. Biden angrily pushed back on that report, acknowledging his age, but declaring, I know what the hell I'm doing.
You know, the nursing homes are full of people who will tell you that.
Yeah, they're full of people who know what the hell they're doing. Exactly. That's why you can't get the remote control out of their hands.
Yeah.
Wednesday's 6-page medical summary did not delve into Biden's mental acuity, but O'Connor reported that Biden's medical considerations remain stable and well controlled. Biden takes 6 medications, 3 prescription, 3 over-the-counter, to deal with sleep apnea, atrial fibrillation, hyperlipidemia, gastroesophageal reflux, seasonal allergies, sensory peripheral neuropathy of the feet, and spinal arthritis, which is linked to a stiffened gait. So they use that to explain the stiffened gait. But his physical exam is essentially unchanged from baseline, Connor wrote. The doctor also noted the president has been happily married for 46 years. He does not use any tobacco products, does not drink alcohol, and he continues to work out at least 5 days per week. Well, that's lovely. Now, there was, in the run-up to the election, some litigating of Trump's fitness. So Judd Legum decided to remind people that when he ran in 2016, Trump dictated a letter declaring himself the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency, and then convinced a doctor to sign it, which is true. This was his doctor. We all remember. Most of us recall this character here. Trump dictated a letter, which is pretty funny. I mean, the contents of this letter.
You know, my doctor, Dr. Vinny Bumbatz.
Yeah, right, exactly. Actually, his blood pressure, 110/65, and laboratory test results were astonishingly excellent at the end of the first paragraph. If elected, Mr. Trump, I can say unequivocally, will be the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency. That's funny. You know what they tell you in medical school? We were talking to my kid's doctor a couple weeks ago, and he said, one thing we doctors tell each other is in medicine, you never say never, but you never say always, right? You never speak in absolutes, because there are no such thing as absolutes in medicine, and you don't tell someone you definitely don't have this disease, right? But this guy seemed to ignore that rule. He will be unequivocally the healthiest individual ever elected to the presidency, and the media made a big deal about this. CNN Sanjay Gupta cast serious doubts on Trump doctors' absurd boasts about his health. So this is what I mean. Like, people pay close attention to this, not for bad reasons. Like, there was reason to think, wow, that's kind of weird how you dictated a note to your doctor. Like, yeah, that's a legitimate issue that you're telling this crazy guy. The guy looks like the guy in Independence Day who gets strangled by the alien. That's what that doctor looks like. And you're dictating
that was
to him,
Brent
hey, you know
Spiner.
what? That's right. That's right. Hey, tell them I'll be the healthiest individual ever elected. Tell them my blood pressure is astonishingly excellent. Like, that's all fair play. That's all fair game. But if that's fair game, what is this? If that's
tell him
fair
George
game,
Washington was a veritable rent boy by comparison.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes. I mean, if all that's fair game, what is this? This is a pretty big deal. You know who agrees? Dr. Cornel West, who's back in action after taking the political world by storm with his presidential run. Here he is on CNN.
48 years old. I was told I only had a few months to live. I said I was blessed to be invited to the banquet of life, to have an embarrassment of riches, but I'm still here, and that's just a mystery. But the important thing is, the low level of trust is such that the Democratic Party cover-up of his cognitive decline leads many of us to think we don't know what the evidence really is. All these lies that have been told. So you got Team Democrat telling these lies, then you got Team Republican telling their lies. How do we know what's the truth?
There is a trust issue here.
Absolutely.
And I think the American people are kind of caught in the middle because
big trust issue here indeed. Well, let's hear the spin. So here is Scott Jennings versus some Democrat operative, I forget her name. But this conversation goes on in a separate clip on X from Western Lensman. Let's hear how they respond to this.
For a long period of time, he was serving as the president and also was a candidate for re-election. And so, yeah, I mean, I think if you're telling the American people for any period of time, not only am I competent to serve and capable of serving today, but I can serve 4 more years, you do deserve, as an American citizen, to know what is the full health situation of the president. And as Dr. West said, you know, the number of lies that were told on his behalf by his White House staff and his campaign and the whole Democratic apparatus. Today, whatever we hear today, by default, the American people are going to say, well, they lied to us about one thing. They're never going to tell us the truth about this thing. I'm like you. This sounds terrible. I'm not a doctor, but just hearing you talk, it sounds terrible. And I think we should pray for the president and pray for his health. And I hope he gets a miracle here. But as a political matter, I think a massive amount of trust has been lost and a massive amount of credibility was spent on covering up for him. And it's going to be hard for the Democrats to get it back.
Are we forgetting here? And I agree with everything that you said. And I agree with a lot of what you said. But are we forgetting here that Ronnie Jackson, when he was the White House doctor for Donald Trump, said that Donald Trump was in good enough health to live to be 200, that he had such incredible genes that he was going to live forever.
We are very much not forgetting that. That's exactly why. He was 6'3" and 239 pounds. Why 239? Because 240 would make him obese, so he had to come in at 1 pound below that. I think that this is exactly why I'm asking the question, because I think a lot of Democrats think that was a scandal that Ronnie Jackson.
Okay, not Exactly. Okay, so this is where Democrats don't know how to do this. Like, they're just not good at this at all. There is a difference in the public mind between a bullshitter and a liar. Now, don't get me wrong. Trump has told many an insidious and unforgivable lie, both in his first term and his second term, especially in his second term. In order for a lie to be malicious and insidious and harmful, it has to be plausibly true. In other words, when a doctor says he can live to be 200, yeah, that's bullshit, obviously. It's not really a lie because we know he can't live to be 200, right?
Yeah.
If he's fudging the weight, that's a little worse because you're making it sound like he is simply overweight and not obese. However, the difference between being overweight and obese pales in comparison to the difference between having prostate cancer and not having prostate cancer. So in order for the lie to be truly scandalous, it has to, A, be plausibly true so that it is shocking and offensive to find out that it's a lie, because that's where the whole deceit comes from. You're not really deceiving me if you tell me Trump can live to be 200, because I know he can't, right? So that's just, you file that under just like
it doesn't meet
bullshit.
the what a reasonable person would believe standard.
Right, exactly. So that's not really a scandalous lie. What is a scandalous lie is the Supreme Court ruled in our favor on the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. Like, that's a scandalous lie. So I don't want to make it sound like he never tells those kinds of lies and that those should never be screwed. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying the Democrats so often will treat crazy bullshit of little to no consequence as this major scandal. And it creates this boy who cried wolf effect. The fact of the matter is, Trump's crazy doctors saying he's an ubermensch who's the healthiest president ever and he can live to be 200, that is nowhere near as scandalous as the cover-up of Joe Biden's cancer, the treatment of which very likely explains the fact that he was dysfunctional as a person while president, while serving as the most powerful man on earth. Those are apples and oranges. You cannot compare those two things. And this is a trap that the Democrats walk into over and over and over again. It's the whole take him seriously but not literally thing, right? To pretend that these are equally scandalous, it just does. That's a dog that just doesn't hunt. That's why he won the first time. That's a lot of why he won the second time. And to Russ's point, it's a lot of why the Democrats, I think, will almost certainly win the House in the midterms because they only need a handful of seats to do so. But it's almost certainly why they're not going to do as well as a functional political party would, because they're just so terrible at politics. And that's a perfect example of it right there.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, these people that you're going to see on CNN or any of these roundtable discussions, you know, that's gig flow, man. That's gig flow. That's a job. You know, you're in the ecosystem. It's just like if you're in theater, right? You make your contacts, you're in the clique, you maintain a good reputation, you get the next gig, you get the next gig, you get the next gig, right? How do they maintain a good reputation? By saying shit like that. Like, it's not really even about, I think, for the person themselves. It's plausibility. It's about how much that's going to please their paymasters who are going to help them get the next gig. Now they'll get hired to speak at that conference. That's a few $1,000s. Like, it's a living for them.
I love that thing you said about Trump's doctor. Ha ha ha. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you sit there and you watch these people talk, it'll drive you crazy. And I only do it as part of my job. Like, I haven't watched an entire segment of one of these shows. I couldn't tell you the last time, because it just drives you insane that these people get paid really well to just spout transparently ridiculous propositions that no reasonable person actually believes is true. And they do it with the air of an expert. Like, well, we're bringing, they wrote this book, and what do they think? And what they think is ridiculous. And this is why almost everything they say about what is going to happen politically is wrong. It's almost always 100% wrong, because it's not even about that, man. It's about constructing a narrative that pleases donors and that pleases the paymasters at the DNC. That's what they do.
Yep, indeed. All right, Truth Seeker, thanks for the $2. Truth Seeker gave us 4 super chats for a combined total of looks like $44. So I'll read those all in a row. Thank you for your generosity, Truth Seeker. Says AOC assures us that the doctors are working as tirelessly to defeat this cancer as Biden was to end the killing in Gaza. I understand that privately the doctors said that the cancer is a bad fucking disease and that if the assault on cancer is making Joe Biden's body stop soon, they might consider eventually reducing the massive carcinogens they're currently supplying his body. In other news, the doctors decided to withhold all food, water, and electricity to Joe Biden because the cancer was merely using him as a human shield. Well done, Truth Seeker. Very clever. Thank you for that. And thank you for those generous donations. You know what? It's only $44, but because I liked it so much, we'll round up and we'll give you a cowbell, right?
We're not going to be cheap.
No.
We've had too many reinforced over the last couple of years.
Yeah, right, exactly. Mark Thicot, thanks for the donation. PSA test, more fitting with a POS test. Oh, good one, Mark Thicot. John Locke, thanks for the $20. As being that his wife is such an amazing doctor, you think she would have caught this? Yes, exactly. His wife Jill is an amazing doctor.
That's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Right.
Why would Whoopi Goldberg have a job talking about politics when she has said so many completely insane, deranged, counterfactual things? Not just our Sonny Hostin about how the climate change was causing the solar eclipse.
Right. Yeah, the eclipse. That's right.
Why is that not career ending? Because they're not being paid to be accurate. It's a brand.
Right.
If you like the kind of nonsense they spew, there you go. It's your go-to.
There you go. Nocturnal Human says givesengo.com/help the houses. Yes, that's Nico House's fundraiser. So yes, please do hit that up. givesengo.com/help the houses. Thank you, Nocturnal Human. Killer Hitton says, sorry, dirtbags. Oops, sorry. But DD quarterly projections are down and the board isn't happy. Either Russell or Keaton has to go. And don't forget your non-compete clauses and stage capitalism. Thank you, Killer Hitton. May Jest, thanks for the $5. Easy one. Sorry, Russell. Thank you, May Jest. I'm not sure what you meant, but that's what came through. All righty. Let's move right on along. Thank you for the Rumble rant, though. All right. Let's move right on along to Jersey. Some Jersey news.
Jersey. Okay, so we have gotten so quickly from rounding up the fruit vendors, and who didn't want that? I fucking hate celery.
Right.
I hate celery. Yeah. There are so many less brown people on my street trying to unload their apples on me now. I'm so happy about it. But they went so quickly from that to locking up their political opponents. It's stunning. It's stunning. Somewhere Hitler is like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
So the DOJ charges McIver, not to be confused with the Arnold Schwarzenegger character, with clashing with ICE officers. McIver, Baraka, and Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman and Rob Menendez were at the Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark earlier this month to protest its use as a migrant holding facility. The lawmakers argued that they were there to conduct legitimate oversight based on accusations that GEO Group, the private prison company operating the facility, lacked the proper permitting. Okay, so we covered this at the time. So Congress does have the right to show up and do spot checks on facilities. And the mayor who got arrested at this event, claiming he was trespassing, was there. He said they didn't have the proper permits for it. So very shortly after this, they really started to, this is my opinion of it, construct the narrative that these politicians had attacked these well-armed and Kevlar-vested ICE agents. There was actually the claim from one of the spokespeople that they body slammed the ICE agents, which right there kind of calls their credibility on this whole thing into question. But we do have some footage that they themselves released to prove how these ICE agents had been viciously attacked by these Congress people. All right, so that's McIver in the red jacket. All right, so this is the footage that was released by Department of Homeland Security with that tweet, and subsequently they released body cam footage. Now, if you look, I don't think okay, even if you say it's an edge case, and I don't think so. I think it's very clear she was being pushed from behind and put her arms out because she was going to slam into the officer. There is no way that you could, even if you want to give the footage the most uncharitable interpretation, that you would think it rises to the level of beyond a reasonable doubt, the claim that she was actually trying to physically attack this officer. But here you go.
The guy behind her is kind of pushing her, and she's kind of leading with her hands. She's going to crash into the guy. Yeah.
Right. So now, one of the ways you know you're dealing with bullshit, where the imperative is to get people who are so ideologically committed and aligned with you to reinforce a narrative that isn't true, is when you see something like this and they tell you it shows something that it clearly does not. They know that there is no way that you could look at this and say, "Oh no, look at her attacking them," but their followers will. Their followers will. I mean, we'll see it a little later. We got some of these tweets. It's a little later in the aftermath. You see the lady in the coat here. This was one of the Congress people, Coleman. Yeah, they're saying these people body slammed the ICE officers. So right there, what credibility do the accusers have? In what world did they body slam the ICE officers? Okay. And this is the arrest of the mayor here, which really set all this off. And you can see again, she's in the background there. It's a lot of chaos. And yeah, I mean, the way I read that footage is she got pushed from behind and put her arms out.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to a protest, right? Like, I've been to Occupy Wall Street protests, the anti-war protests, some of the pro-Palestine protests, although the pro-Palestine protests I've been to, there were no, thankfully, confrontations with the cops. But, at Occupy Wall Street, the cops and the protesters would mix it up all the time. There would very often be, right, you guys got to get to this side of the road. What do you mean? I can't stand here. You can't stand here. Push, push, push. There's a scuffle. Like, if you send everyone in that scuffle to jail, the whole protest movement would be in jail. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, there are scuffles with cops during chaotic situations. Right. That's much different from premeditatively assaulting an officer. You can't say that.
And she's watching that footage. You can't even claim that there was that assault.
Right.
Because technically, within the parameters of the law, you could charge her for that. That's not what that video shows. Certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt. So why would they pursue these charges? As with so much else that they're doing, it is to intimidate political opposition. It's to intimidate protesters. It's to intimidate writers. It's to intimidate podcasters. Why are they questioning Hassan Piker? So a little more here. So this was the response at the time because Homeland Security made a big deal of releasing that body cam footage like it proved something, which it obviously did not. Quote, threatening to arrest members of Congress for exercising their lawful authority is another example of this administration abusing its power to try to intimidate anyone who stands up to them, said a spokesperson for Watson Coleman. The spokesperson said their office has reviewed the body cam footage and that it proves ICE agents put their hands on members of Congress. It also proves that DHS has been lying about this incident. We're honestly surprised they released this footage, given that it so wholly contradicts their claims. Nobody was body slammed. Nobody assaulted any agents, and this footage confirms that. What I don't understand, because you hear her in that last clip saying she's filing a complaint and that she was assaulted, I think they should file, because you can see it in the video that the ICE officers were putting their hands on Congress people. So this is the U.S. attorney for New Jersey proudly announcing her filing of dropping charges against the mayor, but filing charges against McIver. Today, my office has charged Congresswoman McIver with violation of Title 18 United States Code for assaulting, impeding, and interfering with law enforcement. So now the assault charge, if they're actually going to go ahead and claim that she hit the officer, that carries up to 8 years in prison. So let's read some of this. I take my obligations as U.S. attorney seriously. I understand the responsibility that comes with my position, and I will work diligently to uphold the law and deliver justice to the people of New Jersey. After extensive consideration, we have agreed to dismiss Mayor Baraka's misdemeanor charge of trespass for the sake of moving forward. In the spirit of public interest, I have invited the mayor to tour Delaney Hall. The government has nothing to hide at this facility, and I will personally accompany the mayor so he can see that firsthand. The citizens of New Jersey deserve unified leadership so we can get to work to keep our state safe. The dismissal against the mayor is not the end of this matter. Congressional oversight is an important constitutional function and one that I fully support. Well, apparently you do not. However, that is not at issue in this case. What is at issue is my continuing to have this job under a notoriously vicious, vengeful president who demands absolute loyalty and submission. That's my editorial insert there. Representative LaMonica McIver assaulted, impeded, and interfered with law enforcement in violation of Title 18, blah, blah, blah. That conduct cannot be overlooked by the chief federal law enforcement official in the state of New Jersey, and it is my constitutional obligation to ensure that our federal law enforcement is protected when executing their duties. Oh, yeah, man. Those guys must have been quaking in their boots. That was a rough bunch of characters there, those Congress people. I have persistently made efforts to address these issues without bringing criminal charges and have given Representative McIver every opportunity to come to a resolution, but she has unfortunately declined. No one is above the law, politicians or otherwise. It is the job of this office to uphold justice impartially, regardless of who you are. Now we will let the justice system work. Okay, so this is a very chilling development. Proud dog murderer Kristi Noem weighed in on this. After a thorough review of the video footage of Delaney Hall and a full investigation from Homeland Security Intelligence, the U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey has made the determination to charge Congresswoman McIver for assaulting, resisting, and impeding law enforcement officers. No one is above the law except for my boss. If any person, regardless of political party, influence, or status, assaults a law enforcement officer, as we witnessed Congressman McIver do, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. We thank our brave ICE law enforcement officers for taking a break from sexually assaulting inmates for their service to this great nation. Bakara weighed in. He's just glad these crazy bastards didn't put him in jail. So he's kind of conciliatory while trying to say something about this. I am glad that the U.S. attorney has agreed that this case should be dismissed. I have had strong relationships with prior U.S. attorneys. Please don't put me in jail. Please don't put me in jail. And I plan to speak with the current U.S. attorney about issues on which we can cooperate. And he goes on, I understand that the U.S. attorney has chosen to charge Congresswoman LaMonica McIver with assaulting law enforcement. Congresswoman McIver is a daughter of Newark, past Newark Council president, a former student of mine, and a dear friend. I want to be clear. I stand with LaMonica, and I fully expect her to be vindicated. So this is the kind of reaction that you're getting from the kind of little Nazi punks that get off on this kind of shit, like Nick Sorter, who really don't care what might happen to people that they like now that they're opening this door. We, for years, warned that what the Democrats were doing with their lawfare against Trump was opening a door that when the Republicans got in power, was they were going to regret opening. And yes, here we are. It's the ratchet effect. It just keeps getting worse and worse and escalating to in a way that just further and further erodes civil liberties. So Nick Sorter, U.S. Attorney Alina Habba, has officially charged Democrat Representative LaMonica McIver with assaulting, impeding, and interfering with law enforcement. This carries up to 8 years in federal prison. Lock her up and perp walk. Wow, so excited about this. Wait until they are locking you up for misgendering, buddy. Not going to seem like such a good idea then. Matt Van Swall. No one is above the law. Maybe they should put her in the same prison she was trying to break into. I've been reliably informed by Democrats that the people in ICE detention centers are the best of America. Put her in that prison. Response here. The other members of Congress that were with her need to be charged too. Nick Sorter. Don't get your hopes up. Be thankful we even got one. LOL. So yeah, that's the kind of reaction you're getting from Trump world.
This name of this one is Nazi Punks Fuck Off.
Yeah, man. Look, you got people like Nick Sorter make their money this way, whether they actually believe it, don't believe it. I mean, if you can make your money doing what you love, being a Nazi fascist little punk, you'll never work a day in your life, right? So I would think it's an example of his occupation and his beliefs probably marrying pretty well. But yeah, man, it's and hey, it came from the other side too. You know, you had the Democrats, you know, they have a different style. They'll write very lengthy articles about how free speech has gone too far and it's an antiquated idea. They do it that way. These guys do it this way. They go on, lock them up, put them all in the same prison where they like the prisoners so much. But, you know, I mean, it's the same on both sides. They always act when they're in power like they'll never be out of power, like they're not setting dangerous precedents. They're willing to put blinders on to what the realities of the case are. Nobody stepping back and thinking about this for 2 seconds believes this is about that. They honestly think that video shows beyond a reasonable doubt that she attacked ICE officers. So at that point, you have to ask, what is it about? It's about taking lawfare to another level, to a level where you're just going to go after congresspeople, judges, political opponents. This is actually worse than the Wisconsin judge because by all accounts, she actually did that shit. So at least there's an argument, well, we're enforcing the law. This is not enforcing the law. This is weaponizing not only the judicial system, but weaponizing the police forces.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, of course, as I said earlier, like, you know, if you're in a situation where the cops are trying to move you, you know, if a cop pushes on you and you just as a reflex put your arms up and they say, well, you push back, or even as a reflex, if you push back, and that's not an assault of an officer. That's
right.
The heat of a moment, a split second reaction.
Being hit from behind.
Yeah, exactly. She's clearly being shoved. So if she puts her arm out and goes like this, what, you're going to say that's an assault? I mean, no, these people, they're such small people, the Nick Sorters of the world. Oh, really, the heart of this MAGA influence world, and they are such bootlickers. And this is what's so ironic: they're such pussies at the end of the day. These people love cops because they think that the state has to keep them safe from the bad people who are trying to hurt them. These are people who will mock you endlessly if you wore a mask anytime over the past 3 years because, oh, what a coward, what a pussy you are, you're afraid. Let me tell you something. You know, I'm not a masker. You're much more likely, statistically, to die of a respiratory virus than you are to be beaten up by an illegal immigrant gang member. Much more likely. Much more likely. Right. Yet the heart of this MAGA movement can't seem to leave their house without looking over their shoulder as if some Venezuelan's going to come jack them up. They're so afraid.
Obsessed with the idea that they're in constant
under
danger.
Assault. We're being invaded. They're constantly afraid of the world around them to a far greater extent than any other political cohort. This obsession with finding the bad people and throwing them in jail, that's born of cowardice. That's what that is. That is a small, cowardly person who is obsessed with that all day, every day, to the extent that they clearly are.
Yes. And, you know, I mean, this is a psychological phenomena. I actually, it would be interesting to do more research on this. I'm sure a lot of studies have been done on this. If you tell them, you know, actually statistically, you're not in that kind of danger, actually, this doesn't really happen, you're really messing with their whole sense of reality. Like, they'll get angry at you the way that libs will get angry if you tell them, you know, Hillary Clinton actually made sure that women wouldn't get higher wages. She was terrible for women. Like, they, you know, their heads explode. They get their whole way of understanding reality is undermined by that. They just won't do it. Like, you tell them, no, you know, New York, which is used as this proxy in their media for all of this. No, man. I mean, I'm a little guy. You know, I'm 5'6". I have no problems. Ride the subway all the time. That's bullshit. You know what? What about the lady who got lit on fire? What about that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. They're just afraid of everything. They're afraid of everything.
Well, and they're addicted to their fear.
Right. Exactly. They're addicted to their fear. They showcase their fear. Right. Their fear is what defines them in this way. You know, it's a really pathetic thing. And I see some people in the chat saying you can't touch a cop. No, you can't. You can't put your hands on a cop. There's a difference between that and if you're in an active skirmish where people are getting shoved around. I've seen it. I've seen it. You go to people who talk like this have clearly never been in a situation like this where you go. I saw it at Occupy Wall Street all the time. The cops are shoving people around. People are fucking putting their arms up to stop themselves from being shoved. Sometimes they get pushed into a cop and they knock the cop around. Like, they don't do it on purpose. It's part of a chaotic scene. Those people were not arrested because the cops understand at that moment it's part of a chaotic scene. Now, you're going to get some overzealous cops who every once in a while feel like because they got a chip on their shoulder, you know, they want to fucking book somebody. Yeah, that happens. You get overzealous cops every once in a while, sometimes more often than others, depending on the time and place. But I've seen it happen at protests where there's a skirmish, people get knocked around a little bit, and they disperse, and there's nobody leaving in the back of a car. Like, that just is a thing that happens.
Look
at you can't do it on purpose. Obviously, no one's saying you can consciously go up to a cop and shove him. No, you can't. Obviously, you can't do that. I'm saying, look at this situation. These kinds of chaotic situations happen a lot at politically heated gatherings, and it doesn't involve mass arrests as a consequence. That's what I'm saying.
Look, you could see her get pushed there.
She's getting pushed, so she puts her arms up. Like, that's not a premeditated assault. It's just not.
Look,
yeah,
she bounces off him.
Yeah,
and she tries to get around.
The guy in the suit has her by the ass. So what's she supposed to do? Not put her arms up at all? And you lead with your
head. The guy in the suit is Bob Menendez Jr.
Right. So she's clearly being. Yeah, look, the guy's got his hands on her from behind, and she's throwing her head. Like, if you don't do that, will you lead with your head?
Yeah.
You know.
No,
yeah.
I mean it's pretty obvious. Even if you think. And I don't, but even if you think it could be interpreted that way, certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt. Certainly not at a level that you would take the extraordinary step of prosecuting a congressperson for assaulting an ICE officer. And again, look at the other claims they made, that they body slammed ICE, these people. body slammed ICE, these people wouldn't survive a fucking rugby match. You think these people body slammed ICE? That tells you right there they had a pretext in search of some kind of footage to hang it on. And they found a little clip here that they could distort that way to claim that, yeah, no, look, she's beating up on the ICE officer, and that's it. Like they made these claims before they even had any footage to hang these claims on. That's why you have an outrageous claim like body slam, where they just put that out there hoping they could find something they could justify that with. They never did, so they stopped saying that, but then they used this to justify the whole claim.
Exactly. All right. Pardon me. Peter Monahan, good to hear from you, Peter. I've been following you on Facebook, my friend, and yes, I heard this. But thanks for the $50, Peter. Let's have a cowbell for Peter. Appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Says, hey, family, it's been a minute, but I'm doing good. Well, that's great. Still recovering in an assisted living facility in Pepin, Wisconsin. Working my first show, Post Malone in Minneapolis. Financially, I'm taxed, but between Post and the weekend in 3 weeks, I'll make it work. We'll email you. Well, that's great to see you back at it, man. Congratulations. It's great to hear that you're getting back out, working these events. Stay strong, my friend. Stay strong, and thank you for that. Let's have a digital cowbell for Peter for that nice donation.
You got it.
Post Malone once got stranded at the Newburgh airport for a night. It was big local news in my hometown. The weather, he had to stay at Stewart Airport because the severe weather interrupted his flight. I forget where he was flying to. Renee Bunkreamer, thanks for the $5.99, says, thanks for eschewing the Trump warship seen in so many major left conservative figures for remaining analytical and maintaining critical distance. Thank you, Renee. Tony B says, hello, gentlemen, with an alien face. Thank you, Tony B. Appreciate that. Hillary Hinton, thanks for the Rumble rant, says Jimmy D really needs to stop unironically citing Benny fucking Johnson. Also, I put a C note on Magog to win in Armageddon, so I got that going. Yeah. What did he quote Benny Johnson in the Biden thing? I mean, some of those conservative sources, they're right when it comes to the Biden cover-up. I'm assuming that would have been that because I know that was a big theme of the show last night.
Benny Johnson's going to come up later.
Yeah. I think we have some. I think we have some from Benny Johnson later. Your story on Chumley's kind of bummed me out. COVID killed a lot of New York City's character and charm. Well, that wasn't there a fire there and then it came back?
So this is what happened. Like the back wall collapsed, so it was closed for years. But then a bigger restaurateur came in and saved it.
Yeah.
And no sooner did they open, like they just reopened Chumley's a few months before, and COVID hit. Now, one of my big regrets is they auctioned off all of that shit. The book jackets, everything, all the decor, they auctioned everything off. This was pretty early in COVID. And I was like, dude, you don't know if you're going to be freaking, homeless in a few months. Like this is before any of the bills had been passed. Like nobody knew what was happening. I was like, man, if you buy a really cool set of Chumley branded spoons and you have to put them in a shopping cart, you're going to feel pretty fucking stupid.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Never.
But as things turned out, now I wish I had bought some of that stuff.
Yep. Who knew? That's why they were selling it. Right. All right. We will move right on along here. Let's take Vito's here. Vito, don't worry about the fact that the president may have had chemo fog while his fingers on the nuke button. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks. So this was a story that broke on Sunday, right before we did the show, and so we thought we should cover it today, and we're going to use DropSite's article by Jeremy Scahill. Netanyahu says Gaza aid scheme offers Israel symbolic cover to finish the genocide. Now, that is Jeremy Scahill editorializing, but actually not editorializing all that much. This is essentially how the Israeli government talks to its own people. So we're going to play two videos as part of this segment, which were posted in Hebrew with no English translation. So obviously these outlets took it upon themselves to translate what was said. But here you get a really interesting glimpse into how the Israeli government communicates to its own people in this case, the justification for allowing aid into Gaza. So Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear his decision to allow a minuscule amount of aid to enter Gaza is a tactical one aimed at quieting international condemnation of Israel's forced starvation of Gaza and to clear the path of a final solution imposed on the Palestinians of Gaza. We're going to take control of all the Gaza Strip, Netanyahu vowed Monday in a video released by his office announcing that Israel would begin delivering minimal humanitarian aid, food and medicine only. That's a quote, minimal. Netanyahu claimed that international pressure, including from pro-Israel Republican senators and the White House, required the appearance of humanitarian intervention. So this was posted by Netanyahu. See, the post itself is in Hebrew. The video itself is in Hebrew with no subtitles because he has to put it out. It's a public statement. But you notice sometimes Netanyahu will put out a statement in English. He'll record both an English version and a Hebrew version. Sometimes they will subtitle it in English. But these are the kinds of statements that are intended for Israeli ears only. Now, of course, they're public, and so they can be translated. And in this case, DropSite did translate it. But here he is addressing the people's concerns. Hey, why are we letting aid into Gaza? Here he is pretty much apologizing, saying, hey, look, we have to. Otherwise, they're not going to let us finish the war.
ראש הממשלה, יש הבוקר הרבה ביקורת בימין בנושא
There's a lot of criticism from the right this morning on humanitarian issues. It's important to know the facts before criticizing. Since the beginning of the war, we have said that to complete the victory, to defeat Hamas and free all of our captives, two intertwined tasks, there is one essential condition. Sorry, I'm going to lower the volume so I can talk over him without it being too much on your ears. We must not reach a state of hunger, both practically and politically. They simply won't support us, and we won't be able to complete the mission of victory. Therefore, we decided to provide minimal aid during the war, and of course, we advanced in this way. And we discovered, of course, that Hamas is looting some of this aid. Therefore, we stopped the humanitarian aid. And together with our American friends, we decided to implement a different method. The method is distribution points secured by the IDF to prevent Hamas access, allowing American companies to distribute food and medicine aid to the population. It takes time. We are going to set up the first points in a few days and add more later, ultimately to reach a situation where we have an area entirely controlled by the IDF and all the civilian population of Gaza can come there and receive aid while Hamas gets nothing. This is part of holding Hamas accountable alongside the massive military pressure. Our massive entry, essentially taking over all of Gaza and depriving Hamas of any ability to loot humanitarian aid. This is the war and victory plan. Now, a problem has arisen because we are rapidly approaching the red line, a situation where we could lose control and then everything falls apart. Our best friends in the world, senators I know as fervent supporters of Israel, without exception, who I've known for decades, come to me and say this: we are giving you all the support to complete the victory. Weapons, support for your actions, to eliminate Hamas, protection in the Security Council. One thing we cannot stand. We cannot accept images of starvation, mass starvation. We cannot stand that. So what he's saying here is, hey, look, we're sorry to the Israeli people who would like to see us just starve Gaza. We have to let some aid in because our friends in America are not going to let us complete our genocide unless we let a nominal amount of aid in.
Yeah.
So that's the way they talk to their people. They are apologizing to their people for having to let aid in after how many weeks of no aid? What was it, been 11 weeks since any aid at all has gotten in? Netanyahu's coalitional ally, Bezalel Smotrich, an extreme right-wing government minister and longtime advocate of starving, mass killing, and depopulating Gaza, endorsed Netanyahu's move. Smotrich said the aid scheme would allow our friends in the world to continue to provide us with an international umbrella of protection against the Security Council and the Hague Tribunal, and for us to continue the fight, God willing, until victory. In what he described as an emergency press conference to address criticism from his own base, Smotrich laid out the Netanyahu government's genocidal agenda and explained why the appearance of allowing aid is necessary on a strategic level. All right, we're going to play this. I will talk over this I apologize if the background's a little loud. They're landscaping here. They landscape every day at this complex. I don't know, what are they running, a fucking zoo here? They got to landscape every day? Like, let the fucking grass grow a few days. Like, every day outside. All right, so we'll do the best we can. Here we go. Let's start with the simplest thing. No aid is going to Hamas. Period. Anyone who says otherwise is simply lying. I really don't know what his motive is. After all, I was the one who led the demand to stop the foolishness of bringing in thousands of trucks that Hamas takes over and profits over $1 billion from. I was the one who practically led the alternative response of these civilian companies, and I tell you, with responsibility, what was is not what will be. There will be a necessary minimum of food and medicine for the population in Gaza. None of this will reach Hamas. The IDF has been operating since yesterday with 5 divisions in the Gaza Strip with a force not seen in warfare, and this time a completely different operational method than what was in the past. No more methods with ins and outs. We conquer, purify, and stay until Hamas is destroyed. Along the way, we destroy everything that remains of the Strip simply because everything there is one big terror city. We conquer, purify everything that remains in the Strip. This is a huge change from what has been until now. Really? You could have fooled me. Could have fooled me. Looked like this from day one. And with God's help, it will lead to victory, the destruction of Hamas, the return of the hostages, in the framework of the war. The IDF is clearing the population from the combat zone and not leaving. Stone upon stone, I tell you, just look at the videos of the destruction in the Gaza Strip. The population will reach the south of the Strip, and from there, with God's help, to third countries. In the framework of President Trump's plan, this is a change in the course of history, no less. And that's the main thing. That's the goal. That's where we're going, and under no circumstances should we take our eyes off and let less important things weaken us. In the last 2 months, I have led in recent months, I have led an uncompromising demand for a 180-degree change in the distribution of humanitarian aid so that it does not reach Hamas and does not serve as logistical support for the enemy in times of war. The minimum required will reach the population simply so the world does not stop us and accuse us of war crimes. That's it. They're saying it right there. He goes on to say, that's 8 minutes. We're not going to read all of it. We're not going to watch all of it. He goes in to say they'll get a piece of pita. That's what they'll get. That's what each person will get. They'll get a piece of pita, maybe a bowl of soup. That is where they're coming from. This is so blatant that now even Piers Morgan says, how can anyone listen to what Smotrich says here and not conclude he sounds like a genocidal maniac? Wow, genocide. First time hearing that word out of Piers Morgan, to my knowledge. I don't know, in the chat, has anybody else seen him type that word or hear him say that word?
You have shocked the conscience of Piers Morgan.
You have shocked the conscience of Piers Morgan. That's right. Israel's government has been taken over by headbangers like him, and Netanyahu is just letting them do what they want. Who will stop them?
Well, Netanyahu is one of them.
Netanyahu is one of them. And also, how can you say their government is being taken over by headbangers like him? You can see in both Smotrich's video and in Netanyahu's video, they're saying this because they're afraid that their people are going to revolt against them from the right. In other words, they come out here, they're saying, look, we have to let aid in or else the world is going to accuse us of war crimes and they're not going to support us anymore. What this basically shows is that they are coming out and having to do damage control within their own country because they're afraid that their people are going to take issue with the fact that they're letting the Palestinians eat. So this is not like some secret deep state coup within the Israeli government. If anything, they're not going far enough. If anything, they are afraid of an Israeli right-wing rank and file who are going to be pissed off that they're letting any aid in at all. That's why they're saying we're only doing this because we have to. So this tweet's doing pretty well so far. I quote tweeted this. I said, so it seems we're reaching the phase of this war, quote unquote, because it's not really a war. It's a one-sided fish in a barrel. And that we reach in every war, where those who at first credulously absorbed and parroted the pro-war narrative come to realize they made a big mistake and that the anti-war radicals were right all along. Yes, this happens every time. It happens every time. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and they always react with the same hysteria, Piers Morgan being just the prime example of this. If you were anti-Vietnam War, it's because you're a commie. If you were against the Afghanistan war, it's because you like Al Qaeda, or against Iraq, it's because you love Saddam, or you love Putin. If you're against the Ukraine war, and now it's Hamas. Like, they always just say the same thing. It's just this hysterical, hair on fire, paranoid lunatic reaction, and they always end up coming around to saying, you know what, that was a mistake. They never apologize for smearing the anti-war activists who were always right on day one. We're always right on day one, and we never get any credit for it. So here's Piers Morgan, what, a year and 9 months in, finally using that genocide word. Hey, how could you look at Bezalel Smotrich and think he's not a genocidal maniac? Wow, it's almost like we've been saying that
was
from day
obvious
one.
a couple years ago. Yeah.
Obvious a couple years ago. But now they're coming around because I guess you can't see that and think anything else. That's why they don't release those videos in English. Notice Netanyahu puts out English language videos a lot. If he wants the Americans to hear something, he'll record an English language video. Right. Or he'll put subtitles. They are not going to do that. They are not going to deliver that to you in a way that most Americans can digest it, because they know that's giving away the game. That's giving away the game. Hey, you know, this aid, we're not doing it because we're afraid that Palestinians are starving. We're doing it because we're afraid our own people are going to get rid of us, are going to vote us out for having done it. And so we're explaining to them, no, we can't just starve all of them all at once. We won't win the war that way. It's mask off. It's so mask off, they won't release an English language version of those videos.
Yeah, this is something people understand much more now than they ever have before. More people understand it. This is one of the sickest societies in the history of civilization. You're talking about a society that has taken the concept of building itself around dehumanization of the enemy and just admitting no right to a decent life to a group of people by imparting and projecting negative traits that often are the traits of the society itself onto those people.
Right.
They have just constructed an entire narrative now for a few generations that these Arabs who had absolutely nothing to do with World War II, had nothing to do with the Holocaust, had nothing to do with Germany, that they are the Nazis. What can't you do to Nazis, right?
Right.
What's not justified? This is why they're able to say things like this. And not only that, that they have to say things like this. Because in the minds of these brainwashed people, why are you feeding Nazis?
Right.
Why are you feeding Nazis? We saw that video, I think the Gray Zone did it, right? Where they interviewed all these Israeli women. And one was like, what about children? And she goes, children grow up to be Arabs.
Right. Exactly.
That's what you're seeing. You're seeing an entire culture built around the premise that everyone is anti-Semitic. Everyone's anti-Semitic. The whole world is anti-Semitic, right? That it's all means are justified by the ends. This is why you see no soul searching about AIPAC, about going and manipulating governments this way, about manipulating the narrative that way, because that's the only way we can protect ourselves, right? Otherwise, we don't do that, we end up in gas chambers again. Right. So we have to, this is why they support this. And don't think about the nuances. Don't think about the unintended consequences. Don't think about the fact that you're reinforcing a lot of the kinds of tropes that led to the Holocaust, that made the Holocaust actionable, right? You really think you're helping by transparently manipulating the political system of other countries to avoid responsibility for your own genocidal action? I cannot think of what more you could do to lend credibility to people who have revisionist views on the Holocaust, which we're seeing become more and more mainstream the longer this goes on. People who believe that we saw it when the Pope died. Oh, you know, the Vatican's run by Jews. The Vatican.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They say anti-Semitism is socialism for stupid people. And that is the brand of anti-Semitism you're seeing legitimized by this, right? Like everything that we would attribute, I think rightly, to the fact that you really do have a cabal of super wealthy people who run the earth and disempower most of the population. They take that, and in place of that, they put in Jews. This is why, these same people will be worshipful of people like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Why? Because they don't need to ascribe it to people like that. They need to ascribe it to Jews. And this has not helped. I see more of that more openly and more mainstream than I ever have in my life now.
Yeah, no, and it's so this is just one more step in implementing their final plan for Gaza. This is a logistical step. Yes,
it's the final
exactly.
solution.
Yeah, this is a logistical step in their minds. That's all this is. This is, hey, we have to do this so that our Western allies don't say, hey, this is too much, this looks too bad. Now, it's kind of incredible that they would feel a need to maintain some kind of good image at this point. I mean, you'd think you've gotten away with all of this. Like, what can't you get away with?
Well, I mean, he said it. They're hearing from senators who are saying, listen, ixnay on the starving children nay. You're making it hard for me to answer for my votes.
Right. Exactly. All right. So, in response to Israel allowing minimal quantities of aid into the Gaza Strip, there have been a handful of countries who have come out and said, we're not buying it. So, first few aid trucks enter Gaza, but allies threaten Israel with sanctions and urge more. So this is going to be clipped separately, but the reason why Israel is allowing aid into Gaza, as admitted by Netanyahu and Bezalel Smotrich, is because they want the Western allies to remain in their pocket, and they feel like they will not get adequate support as long as images of starving children pervade online. However, the first few aid trucks entered Gaza on Monday following nearly 3 months of Israel's blockade of food, medicine, and other supplies. Israel and the United Nations said, as Israel acknowledged growing pressure from allies, including the United States. The UN humanitarian chief, Tom Fletcher, called it a welcome development, but described the trucks as a drop in the ocean of what is urgently needed. Food security experts last week warned of famine in Gaza. During the latest ceasefire that Israel ended in March, some 600 aid trucks entered Gaza each day. Shortly after Israel announced the first trucks entered Gaza, the UK, France, and Canada issued a sharply worded joint statement calling the aid wholly inadequate. They threatened concrete actions against Israel, including sanctions for its activities in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, and called on Israel to stop its egregious new military actions in Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the joint statement and called it a huge prize for the genocidal attack on Israel on October 7th. The statement by France, Canada, and the UK marked one of their most significant criticisms of Israel's handling of the war in Gaza and Israel's actions in the occupied West Bank. We oppose any attempt to expand settlements in the West Bank, the three countries said, calling them illegal. The countries said they have always supported Israel's right to defend itself against terrorism, but called the military escalation in Gaza disproportionate. The countries earlier criticized the new U.S.-backed proposal for aid delivery in Gaza, saying it would not align with humanitarian law. And today, the UK went a step further and suspended free trade talks with Israel. They also announced sanctions over West Bank settlers. The British government ramped up its criticism of Israel's military offensive in Gaza by suspending free trade talks Tuesday and hitting West Bank settlers with sanctions. The moves came as international pressure mounts on Israel following a nearly 3-month blockade of supplies into Gaza that led to famine warnings. It led to famine, not just famine warnings, but famine. Even the United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has voiced concerns over the growing hunger crisis. Foreign Secretary David Lammy described the situation in Gaza as abominable and said that while an existing trade agreement was in place, the government couldn't continue discussions with an Israeli government pursuing what he called egregious policies in the West Bank and Gaza. The world is judging, Lamy said. History will judge them. Blocking aid, expanding the war, dismissing the concerns of your friends and partners. This is indefensible, and it must stop. The actions came a day after the UK, France, and Canada issued a joint statement condemning Israel's handling of the war in Gaza and its actions in the occupied West Bank. Israel's ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hatavali, was summoned to the Foreign Office on Tuesday, where Middle East Minister Hamish Falconer...
Ambassador and vaudeville aficionado.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes. Where Middle East Minister Hamish Falconer planned to call the 11-week blockade of Gaza cruel and indefensible. Lamy announced that in addition to previous sanctions imposed by the UK, it was now imposing sanctions on a further 3 individuals, 2 illegal settler outposts, and 2 organizations supporting violence against the Palestinian community. He said the illegal Israeli settlements were spreading across the West Bank with the explicit support of this Israeli government. Lamy's remarks followed those of Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who said the suffering by children in Gaza was utterly intolerable and repeated his call for a ceasefire. I want to put on record that today we're horrified by the escalation from Israel, Starmer said. Now, whenever something like this happens, I like to cover it not for the purpose of giving these government officials any credit, but for the purpose of giving us in the activist space the credit that I think we deserve for forcing these things. Because this was Keir Starmer right after October 7th saying that the Israelis were, of course, justified in cutting off electricity and water to the entire Gaza population.
Israel does have that right to defend herself, and Hamas bears responsibility.
A siege is appropriate? Cutting off power, cutting off water?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. Obviously, everything should be done within international law.
Well, you can't deny a civilian population water under international
it's literally a war crime.
Yeah, that
is and he's a lawyer.
Possible. Yes. That is a contradiction in terms, my friend. But how far we've come in terms of public opinion and public pressure. One of the reasons we think why Israel in its current form is not long for the world is because of the isolation that they will face economically. So suspending free trade agreements is one step, but it's a big step. Like, this has to happen over and over again. And the fact that the UK is talking like that is pretty important, since they are one of the worst offenders in the world next to us. Nobody holds a candle to us, obviously. But they are pretty bad. They are pretty bad. And so for them to talk about suspending trade relationships, economic relationships, sanctioning the settlers, that's a big step, and that's a step that they were obviously forced into. If you look at Keir Starmer, that was just a year and a half ago. He had no problem saying, yeah, they have the right to cut off water to the civilian population.
Right.
So, I mean, you can believe he's had a coming to Jesus, or you can believe that the groundswell of activism has made a difference. And I think the latter is far more true than the former. These people are just amoral, just reptilian actors. They don't, like, Keir Starmer just strikes me just as Joe Biden does. Someone who does not have a human concern in the world for any of these people. But he has political instinct. That's why he is where he is. And to me, this is clearly a response to a shift in attitudes at the rank and file. I think that is what explains this. I think that's what explains the fact that Canada and France signed on. Mark Carney's a Zionist.
Right.
Justin Trudeau was a Zionist. He said, I'm a proud Zionist. At a certain point, you can move things. You can move things if you stick to it and if you don't get defeated. If the Palestinians in the West Bank can go out every week and protest for their land, as was featured in the Northern Land movie, then yeah, we can stick to it here, and it might look fruitless in the moment. But as we've seen a few different times. Even if it seems fruitless in the moment, it can have payoffs later on. When Rashida Tlaib accused the Michigan Attorney General of bias, well, that meant nothing for 6 months. And then it all of a sudden meant something because a situation arose where if she continued prosecuting the case, it would demonstrate clear bias since Jewish groups were egging her on to do it. So she had to call the case off, right? So even if it looks hopeless in the moment, if you stick to it, you can put wins on the board, and I think this is one of them.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were doing that segment about I was there last February for the Assange thing. That was just last year. And you remember I actually got footage and it became a big story about how they were accusing them of projecting anti-Semitic slogans onto Big Ben. And when you looked at what they said, it was Free Palestine.
Stop bombing Gaza. That was what
Stop
it was,
bombing Gaza. It was like crazy to accuse them of anti-Semitism for the things that were actually there. So yeah, I mean that's only a little over a year ago that I was there, and that was the tenor of the conversation in England. Hopefully they'll stop arresting Richard Medhurst now, and the other journalists that they've been arresting for this. I have, as hard as it is sometimes to maintain faith in the darkest moment. Hey, you want to talk about the effect of activism? Julian Assange is free, right?
Exactly.
In the end, you're absolutely right. And this is why I have believed throughout this, in the end, this is the end of Israel. They just don't know it yet. Israel as an apartheid state is going to be destroyed as a consequence of the global backlash against what they're doing now. They are never again, they are assuming, you know a lot about a culture by what they have a word for, right? People always observe, the Germans have Schadenfreude, right? Taking joy in someone's pain says something that you have a word for that.
Right.
The Israelis have a word that translates literally as establishing facts in the field. Right. It's essentially the same as our phrase, better to ask forgiveness than permission. That is what they're trying to do here. That is what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make the complete genocide and ethnic cleansing of greater Israel, as they see it, a fait accompli, with the assumption that the world will get over it.
Right.
That once it's done, it's going to be like the Native Americans, they'll put up a plaque, but we'll have greater Israel. It's not going to play out that way. This is not the 19th century. They're never going to be able to get out from under the stigma of this. And at that point, and this is what I keep saying, the Israelis are not going to live in an economically desolated country with no opportunity. And that is what Israel is going to become. You already have enormous brain drain. You have mass bankruptcies. Tourism will never come back. And you're going to, this is just the beginning. Eliminating these kinds of trade agreements. You're going to see more and more sanctions. They're going to scream louder and louder about how the world is anti-Semitic. It's a very self-fulfilling prophecy at this point. And they're going to collapse. They are going to collapse. And when they do, the countries around them are going to make them pay, in my opinion.
All right. Tony B, hello, gentlemen. Oh, we got that one, Tony B. Javier says, Biden has cancer. How can cancer have cancer? Thank you, Javier. Daria, thanks for the $2. Keaton and Russell are as cute as buttons. Thank you, Daria. Appreciate that.
Are we?
Very much. Hot Hamburg Sandwich says that Massie feud is like getting caught between two slices of bread. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks for that generous donation.
Are you going to be doing that ad read? So I've been ready to step away.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me do that now, actually. Good call. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, you can put yourself in the back if you want, and I'll just take one more super chat here. Let's see here. Mark Pugliese says, I've heard people say you were right all my life. I could throw up. That's right, Mark Pugliese. Thank you very much for that. All right, folks, we are going to pause for a brief word from Field of Greens by Brickhouse Nutrition. So this doesn't happen often. You're going to want to jump on this Memorial Day sale. That's right. Brickhouse Nutrition is having their Memorial Day sale this week for a limited time. You could save 25% off everything with my code MEMORIAL25. Memorial25. That includes Lean, which is a weight loss supplement that targets the goals of GLP-1 injections, but without needles or prescriptions. People are seeing real results, and they love that it curbs the cravings. So check out the website reviews on that. Also, of course, Field of Greens, a flagship product of theirs, is the super fruit and vegetable drink that literally promises your doctor will notice your improved health or your money back. They have several different flavors of the green juice. I'm a simple man of simple taste. I love green juice, actually, and I love just the original flavor. But if you want to go nuts, wild berry, strawberry lemonade, or lemon lime. So they have several different varieties of that. As someone who has a bit of a nervous stomach from time to time, green juice is often a good substitute for me for coffee. If coffee is aggravating my digestive system, green juice tends to give you a good energy burst without taxing your stomach too much. So that's a good go-to if you're starting out. But they have, like I said, a full line of products on the website, whether it's collagen, creatine, or any of their other doctor-formulated products. It's all 25% off this week. So kick off a healthy summer and save big while you're at it. Go to brickhousenutrition.com and use Memorial25. That's the coupon code for 25% off. Don't wait. Like I said, the sale's only on for a few days. That's brickhousenutrition.com. brickhousenutrition.com. You can scan the QR code. Link is in the description of the video as well. All right. Where did Russell go? Okay, Russell's on his way back, I assume. All right, there you go. Made it back. Perfect. All right. Where are we at here? We got some more Rumble rants. Cool Blue says Joe Biden, his family, the Democratic Party, and their allies, especially in the media, lied about the overall condition of the 46th U.S. president. That is dangerous to this nation and its people. Are you there? Your mic is hooked up?
Yeah.
Okay,
Aren't I?
it's on. Cool. Yep, you're good. Hamhawk says the starvation will continue until morale improves. Thank you, Hamhawk. Yes. Daryl Cooper's new book, the Israel fight against obesity in the Gaza Strip. Thank you, Eric Husso. Appreciate that.
Did that podcast come out?
Did he ever drop
like
the
it seemed
Hitler
like he was going
podcast?
around trying to promote it.
Yeah.
But then, I know he must not have dropped it because of the absence of Nazis praising it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I thought that was going to come out. I thought that was going to come out in early April.
Maybe he thought better of it.
Maybe he pulled it. Maybe he did. All right. Why don't we move on?
Okay. What's next?
Well, next we got Thomas Massie versus Donald Trump.
Ah, yes. Classy Tom Massie, as they call him around the Senate cloakroom. So round 3 of Massie versus Donald Trump. Let's look at where it started. This is before Donald Trump, I guess, knew who he was. This was during COVID. A lot of his most passionate followers really discovered him, developed a love for him then. He was very anti-mandate, very anti-lockdown, as you'd expect from a committed libertarian. So here's our illustrious leader in his first term. Looks like a third-rate grandstander named Representative Thomas Massie, a congressman from, unfortunately, a truly great state, Kentucky, wants to vote against the new Save Our Workers bill in Congress. He just wants the publicity. He can't stop it, only delay, which is both dangerous and costly. Workers and small businesses need money now in order to survive. Virus wasn't their fault. It is hell. Dealing with the Dems. Had to give up some stupid things in order to get the big picture done. 90% great. Win back House. But throw Massie out of Republican Party. Okay. So that's how it started. There's going to be like the end of When Harry Met Sally. You're going to see him and Massie on a couch,
right?
Talking
yeah, exactly.
about how they met. So jump forward to Trump's second term, and this is back in March. Massie refused to vote for the continuing resolution. This is what he said. I'm not voting for the continuing resolution budget cut, copy, paste omnibus this week. Why would I vote to continue the waste, fraud, and abuse Doge has found? We were told the CR in December would get us to March when we would fight. Here we are in March punting again. WTFO. So Trump responded to this with his usual measured tone. Thank you to the House Freedom Caucus for just delivering a big blow to the radical left Democrats and their desire to raise taxes and shut our country down. They hate America and all it stands for. That's why they allowed millions of criminals to invade our nation. Sometimes it takes great courage to do the right thing. Congressman Thomas Massie of beautiful Kentucky is an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact that he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. He should be primaried, and I will lead the charge against him. He's just another grandstander who's too much trouble and not worth the fight. He reminds me of Liz Cheney. The difference is he actually has a very devoted following. Right. He's really nothing like Liz Cheney, as he found out very quickly. He reminds me of Liz Cheney before her historic record-breaking loss. The people of Kentucky won't stand for it. Just watch. Do I have any takers? Anyway, thank you again to the House Freedom Caucus for your very important vote. We need to buy some time in order to make America great again, greater than ever before. Unite and win. That did not go the way that he thought it was going to. But you know who agreed with him? AIPAC. Israel's lobby launches preemptive war on Thomas Massie. Republican Jewish Coalition CEO Matt Brooks told Jewish Insider, if Tom Massie chooses to enter the race for U.S. Senate in Kentucky, the RJC campaign budget to ensure he is defeated will be unlimited. So this is not a good look on two ends. Massie took a principled stand, refused to attend Netanyahu's disgusting speech to Congress, which AIPAC attacked him for, pairing him with the likes of Bernie Sanders and AOC. So, it's really not a good look to be attacking this guy who legitimately has the principles that Trump pretends to have, whether you agree with them or not. He's a straight arrow who actually has these convictions. And on top of it, given that you're basically Miriam Adelson's sock puppet and everybody knows it, it's not a good look to be aligning yourself with a lobby for Israel that clearly despises this man and has openly avowed to get rid of him. So, some of the MAGA people read the room wrong. Chris LaCivita, TikTok, Tommy, got a lot of pushback for that. Carol, TikTok, Chrissy, you picked the wrong fight. Clint Russell, threatening the only congressman that actually stands for America first. Bold strategy. Let it be known that the Libertarian Alliance, which bolstered Trump into his popular victory, will immediately become your worst enemy if you oust Thomas Massie. Leave him alone. Even Nazi punk in good standing with MAGA, Nick Sorter, spoke against this. Chase Oliver spoke out against it. So Massie responded to LaCivita. Someone thinks they can control my voting card by threatening my reelection. Guess what? Doesn't work on me. 3 times I've had a challenger who tried to be more MAGA than me. None busted 25% because my constituents prefer transparency and principles over blind allegiance. So now here he is. He gave an interview to a friend of show, Winston Marshall here, who I met at Dissident Dialogues, about the attacks that he's gotten from Donald Trump on his positions.
20, he called me a third-rate grandstander when I opposed the COVID spending stimulus. I said it would cause inflation. I said, hey guys, if you send out checks, cash to people and corporations, and then tell people not to make anything, not to produce things, not to go to work, then you're going to cause massive inflation. And we printed $5 trillion then. Like, you can't print and create money out of thin air without causing inflation. And that, what I said was going to happen did come true, but I was the only Republican or Democrat who opposed the $2.2 trillion CARES Act in March of 2020. Then that drew his ire. I think his ire was genuine then. But most recently, when I didn't vote for the CR, the continuing resolution that locks in Biden's spending for the first 9 months of Trump's administration, when I didn't vote for that, I think the reason he attacked me was to send a message to other members. Like,
Yeah, that sounds like him, all right.
Yes, indeed.
Which brings us up to the present. Quote tweeting, Moody's cuts America's pristine credit rating, citing rising doubt. Massie says, the big, beautiful bill will add $20 trillion of federal debt over 10 years. And that's according to the authors of it. But there's another huge problem. It will increase the price of the $36 trillion of debt we already have, as bond buyers realize we aren't fiscally responsible. Now, obviously, I do not really share his economics, but he's not wrong. He's not wrong. You cannot just continue to run up that kind of debt without eventually people losing faith in your debt, which in most cases is manifested in people buying treasuries. That's how we finance this. If they don't want your treasuries anymore, that's why treasuries from emerging markets pay so much higher interest than treasuries from an advanced industrial nation, because it's riskier. You're taking more risk. There's a premium on risk. We're already seeing the bond rates have been elevated for years. I mean, really since COVID. So Trump didn't like the sound of that. So he was asked about Massie's comments. This is what he said.
Say it. I'm a fiscal hawk. I'm a bigger fiscal hawk. There's nobody like me as a fiscal hawk.
Massie said it adds more deficit than Biden did. This bill kind of.
Because we have to fix the country.
Do you think that Thomas Massie is correct in saying that this is adding Biden?
No, I don't think Thomas Massie understands government. I think he's a grandstander, frankly. He'll probably vote. We don't even talk to him much. I think he should be voted out of office. And I just don't think he understands government. If you ask him a couple of questions, he never gives you an answer. He just says, I'm a no. He thinks he's going to get publicity. And you have that. You have that. They've got some too. Go ahead. Mr. President.
Yeah, Massie does not strike me as a guy who's motivated by a desire for publicity. He really does not read that way. So this is where you can really see who stands where in the griftiverse, because you have a lot of these MAGA accounts for whom this creates a real problem, because whether you see it or not, we saw it recently in the story about the food companies that were paying these influencers to frame sugar and drinks as a freedom of choice issue. That these guys are getting paid by certain interests. They're part of a certain ecosystem. So when Trump attacks a guy like Massie, who is very popular with Trump's own base, maybe, and with certain sectors of the base, definitely more popular than Donald Trump, it puts the grifters in a tough spot. It would be much easier for them if their whole audience just picked a side. So the easiest thing for them to do, given that Thomas Massie is just a Republican representative in the House, and Donald Trump is a guy with, scams in every direction. He's got coins going. He's got the executive club going. God knows how much money in one way or another is being funneled into a lot of these MAGA accounts from Trump organizations or related organizations. So for them, they're highly motivated to build a backlash against Thomas Massie. And I think you can kind of see who's getting paid by who by the reaction to these splits when they come up. Like La Civita, I think you found out who pays him by the fact that he took that stand, because even us not really being in that particular echo chamber could have seen that coming. That it's a bad move to go after Thomas Massie. He has too much of a fan base. So if you look, you can see who the real grifters are. Eric Doherty. Trump roasts Thomas Massie.
Well, he was one of the soda guys. Eric Doherty was one of the he was one of the guys who got paid to,
Isn't he the one who put out the whole apology? My bad.
Something like that. I forget which one did which,
that,
but yeah,
that
maybe.
was him,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think that was him. Johnny MAGA. Trump unleashes on Thomas Massie. Benny Johnson, no surprise there. It's a fugazi. It's a fugazi.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. President Trump just went scorched earth on Representative Thomas Massie. You see what they're doing? They're trying to build a consensus with the MAGA online people that Thomas Massie bad. Thomas Massie bad. I don't think they're going to get very far. People who are really particularly invested in COVID, man, those folks really protect their idols, man. And Thomas Massie is one of their idols.
Massie's also like genuinely good on civil liberties, which like if you're one of these Republican fucks,
I'm not dismissing.
I'm just saying.
I'm not trying to be dismissive.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, if you're one of these like Republican fucks who wants to maintain like some bona fides in that respect, if you're not so narrow-minded where you only exist to pump Donald Trump, then Massie is a guy you really don't want to go scorched earth on,
right?
Because when all of this is said and done, he's going to be looking much better than 99% of the Republican Party when it's all said and done.
Absolutely.
When the dust settles, you're going to want to you were going to have much fewer regrets for having defended Thomas Massie than just about anyone else in this party now. With some exceptions, but very few.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So this was somebody replied to Benny Johnson. Trump goes after one of the few true defenders of the Constitution while standing next to a proven globalist traitor. I guess he means Johnson, simply because Thomas Massie told him no on a bad bill. AIPAC has also gone after Mr. Massie for years. Coincidence? Probably not. AIPAC tracker, Thomas Massie, 0. I'm sure everyone in our audience has seen that famous clip in his Tucker interview where he talks about how everybody has an AIPAC handler in Washington. And that's why they hate him. So this was just breaking right before we went on. He was right back at it today. Republicans going to bat for tax deductions that will primarily benefit limousine liberals in blue states. He's talking about the SALT tax.
Yeah.
This carve out for affluent people in states like New York and California will increase the deficit substantially and is a reversal of Trump's first-term tax policy. Now, this is kind of interesting to me because usually these libertarians are very anti-tax, but he's arguing against capping the SALT tax this way. SALT tax is a tax deduction for state income tax. The blue states have enormous state tax, so that's a big benefit for rich people who live in blue states if you make the SALT tax cap very high. So yeah, man, he's not sweating Trump. I don't think he has to. I mean, it sounds like you couldn't get him out of his district with dynamite. And Massie is such a thorn in Trump's side because in very many ways, he actually walks the walk of what Trump only talks about. They're not actually cutting the deficit. They're just trying to put more money in the pockets of rich people. It was never about cutting the deficit. Massie is right. This budget doesn't cut the deficit. It just moves everything around. It cuts support for the poor. It cuts support for the working class, which this is where I'm at odds with Massie. He likes that part. He doesn't think government should be involved in that kind of thing. I don't agree. But it doesn't then put that money back into the pockets of the average taxpayer. It stuffs that money into the pockets of people who don't need it. It stuffs that most of that money goes to the upper 20% of society, 68% of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the SALT tax is a sticking point, particularly because the Republicans have a pretty narrow majority, and so they're depending on the votes from a lot of like blue state Republicans in PMC-oriented districts like Mike Lawler, perfect example, right? He's huge on that SALT tax because that is what he gets to bring home to his voters who are mostly Democrats. I mean, his supporters are not mostly Democrats, but that district leans blue under normal circumstances. So you got to be able to give them something like that if you want even a chance of keeping your seat. And under normal circumstances, the Republicans may be able to just tell them, hey, fuck you, deal with it. But they can't now because their majority is slim enough where they have to play ball, which means they're going to lose a Thomas Massie. But it looks like they have the votes anyway, which is why it's pretty stupid of Trump.
They did for the continuing resolution, although the stakes are higher for this.
They are higher.
That was by definition temporary.
Exactly. Right. And so, I don't think it is good politics for Donald Trump to be going after Thomas Massie because when you look at this, I mean, not that Maha is the same thing, but, Trump won by making sort of different constituencies happy, whether it was the meme coin people or the podcast bros or the libertarians. I mean, he took a huge chunk of libertarian support out of the Libertarian Party. They left their own candidate high and dry and basically used their party infrastructure to boost Trump. And Massie is very popular in these circles for good reason. Like he's a legitimately principled guy who I would feel much safer having President Thomas Massie than President Donald Trump, 100%.
Oh,
100%.
absolutely. No question about it.
It's not even a question. And a lot of people who support both Massie and Trump probably feel that way as well. I bet if you got these Mises
That's what he doesn't get.
That's what he doesn't get. Like, if you got a lot of these Mises caucus libertarian types in a room and you ask them, hey, Donald Trump and Thomas Massie are running against each other in a primary. Who do you vote for? I'm sure a lot of people would say Massie. He's very well liked for understandable reasons. Like I said, his principles are not mine across the board, but on civil liberties, we certainly overlap almost entirely. And as we're seeing, that's huge. That's huge.
It seems like he doesn't mind taxing the rich.
Well, that too, at least in this context.
That's a little bit of a curveball.
Yeah. Well, in this context, especially as it pertains to this dispute here. But yeah, for him to be singling him out and saying he needs to be voted out of office, it's not a good move. Now, look, Trump is a lame duck. He's not running again, right? There's an open question as to how much he really cares, right? But this is definitely not good for their coalition to be going after him like this, especially since it's one vote. You probably have what you need anyway. So at that point, it just comes off as petty and antagonistic and egotistical to no good end. It's one thing if that kind of bravado is necessary to whip votes, but in this case, it's probably not. So what are you doing?
The reaction I saw from many quarters, and this is kind of MAGA on MAGA, so it's mostly coming from those quarters, was Trump is such a small man. I saw a lot of that comment.
Yep. And it is true in this context, especially for sure. All right. Let's see. DC says, ironically, most Israelis are anti-Semitic. Scorpionic Sag, thanks for the $9.99. The Israelis see themselves as continuing Western civilization by fighting the Muslims and Persians. It goes back to the Greek and Roman empires. The same is true with American Christian Zionists. Bart, thanks for the $10 super sticker. Appreciate that. Tom says, if I were religious, I would say that Revelation 2:9 referred to the Zio-Nazi MFers and their supporters. Thank you, Tom. We're going straight to your Qatar segment now, Russ, because I have one more as well. So we're going straight through to that. If you need to get that ready.
Okay.
Rubber Toe says, God personally speaks to us, but we rarely hear. If you get premonition of something, you can't know. It's God speaking. To verify, ask, is that you, God? God will answer telepathically. It is I. Thank you, Rubber Toe.
That's good to know. I thought it was indigestion.
Yeah, right. Exactly. R. Dean W., if you're willing to admit, like Starmer, that Israel is allowed to cut off water to Palestine, you have to acknowledge that Israel is running a prison state with absolute genocidal authority. Well, that's the other thing that doesn't make sense, and that is also a tell about Starmer. We mentioned that the previous time we covered this, where he said that he considered the occupation illegal. Well, if you consider the occupation illegal, then why do they even have the ability, much less the right, to cut off water? Like, if it's an illegal occupation, shouldn't they not have the capacity to control the flow of electricity and water into Gaza. That's what I mean. He doesn't really speak out of principle. He speaks out of convenience.
Right.
And so he is
Right.
a barometer, right? You could tell where the public is based on where he is, not the other way around. Establishing facts in the field sounds like shoot first, ask questions later, but with 2,000-pound bombs. Exactly. Yes, stupid sign. Well put. Well put. Okay, Oven the King says no one should be surprised they didn't disclose that info on Biden, especially after they kept that walking corpse lady in the Senate or Congress. Yes, Feinstein to talk about. You guys are great.
Yeah.
Here's to your.
I mean, she really did look like
yeah.
somebody had taken a Walking Dead character and put him in Congress.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Javier, thanks for the $4.99, says you guys are great. Here's to your inevitable 100,000 follower subscriber milestone. Thank you. Proud to be here. Thank you, Javier. Appreciate that very much. All right, let's move right on along.
Okay, so I promised a part 2 on this, on the Trump coin, because I'm kind of fascinated by the blatant corruption of this and how far they're pushing it. He's really taking corruption to 11. So this is Trump back in 2019, before they started paying him. I am not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and based on thin air. You know, he understood all this before they started stuffing his pockets full of money. Unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade and other illegal activity. And somebody leaned in and whispered in his ear, you know, you could profit from illegal activity if you got into crypto. Oh, really? Tell me more.
Right.
Similarly, Facebook Libra's virtual currency will have little standing or depend. This is Trump being serious. You notice there's no all caps. There's very little of the air quotes. Will have little standing or dependability. If Facebook and other companies want to become a bank, they must seek a new banking charter and become subject to all banking regulations, just like other banks, both national and international. You know, he sounds like Elizabeth Warren. He sounds like Elizabeth Warren. We have only one real currency in the USA, and it is stronger than ever, both dependable and reliable. That sounds more like Trump, but the other part sounds like Warren. It is by far the most dominant currency anywhere in the world, and it will always stay that way. It is called the United States dollar. So he got a little pushback there from Cernovich. This is a major mistake on your part and shows a lack of vision. And this guy who will become a very important figure in Trump world later on, as far as the crypto side of the business goes, Justin Sun. Mr. President, you are misled by fake news. Hashtag Bitcoin and hashtag blockchain happens to be the best chance for U.S. I'd love to invite you to have lunch with crypto leaders along with Warren Buffett on July 25th. I guarantee you after this lunch, nobody will know crypto more than you. Now, I don't think that Trump went to that lunch, especially given his views at the time, but Justin Sun is going to be at that big crypto dinner. You see, Trump announced a big dinner to juice up his Trump coin. The top, I think it was 225 accounts or 220 accounts that bought Trump coin would get invited to this. It's going to be next week now on the 22nd. And guess who bought the most? Justin Sun. Justin Sun, who openly shared that he bought 75 million worth of the Trump family's World Liberty Financial Token, a digital token where 75% of proceeds go to Trump-related entities, is believed to be at the top of the Trump meme token leaderboard. Sun, who was born in China, is the crypto entrepreneur behind the Tron blockchain and is in talks with the SEC to resolve civil fraud charges. This guy is currently being charged by the SEC, and he was looking for a suspension of those charges. And guess what? He got them. They suspended the charges while they work something out. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the $75 million worth of Trump coin that he bought. And not only that, guess who emceed a little get-together in, I think this was in Abu Dhabi, with Eric Trump and Zach Witkoff, who were spearheading this whole Trump coin and Tether coin effort. Justin's son. He's done pretty well for himself. Trump now, from having been very much against crypto for, I think, pretty sound reasons, now nearly $3 billion of Donald Trump's net worth reportedly comes from his crypto interests. It's from the New York Post. That's about 40% of the net worth of the Trump organization is now tied up in their various crypto schemes. So it's kind of an obvious conflict of interest for a guy who's going to be making decisions about the regulation of crypto in his capacity as president. So this is Zach Witkoff, the son of our roving Middle East ambassador. Meet USD1. Special thanks to our partners BitGo, in particular Mike Belshie and Baylor Myers. The future is here, and it is so bright. Okay, so USD1 is their stablecoin. Stablecoin is a cryptocurrency that is pegged to the value of the US dollar. So in theory, if they're not running a scam, in cases where they're not running a scam, there have been cases where it was a scam, usually the money that comes into you from people to have that stable coin will go into US treasuries. How do you make money? Off the interest on the treasuries. The people with the stable coin don't make any interest. The service you're providing is giving them this digital coin pegged to the dollar. Any money that they give you, especially bonds are through the roof right now, making 4 or 5% a year, do very well off that. So here's a picture of the gang here meeting up. That is the CEO of Binance there with the Binance shirt, and that's Eric Trump and Zach Witkoff and their other two partners who have a pretty interesting history. The company plans to offer USD1 on a platform developed by Binance, a giant exchange that settled criminal charges with the Justice Department in 2023. You're seeing a theme? Like almost everybody involved in this has been charged with corruption, fraud. Yeah. Like there's nobody here who has not been charged with finance-related crimes. This week, Mr. Witkoff, Mr. Chase Harrow, and Mr. Zachary Folkman, those guys are kind of the brains behind this, met with Changpeng Zhao, Binance's founder and former chief executive, in Abu Dhabi. Mr. Zhao, who served 4 months in federal prison for money laundering violations, has been seeking a pardon from the Trump administration, according to people familiar with the matter who requested anonymity to discuss a sensitive topic. I mean, this is really just banana republic shit, where you have the children of the leader and their fellow Nepo babies running around and basically shaking people down for bribes in exchange for favorable legislation. I mean, this makes the Biden crime family look like a lemonade stand.
Yeah, this is like really the My Pillow of currency speculation.
Yes, yes, exactly. So these are the guys who are really like conceiving all this. Mr. Folkman, who has short curly hair and tattoos, ran a company in his 20s tutoring forlorn men on how to pick up women. Well, you know, I must say that market base probably prepared him pretty well to manipulate MAGA people into buying coins. In numerous podcast appearances, Mr. Harrow has recounted his life's redemption arc, describing a wild youth in which he was charged with marijuana possession and spent a couple of weeks in a Wisconsin jail. The two men had worked together for years, selling everything from colon cleanses to get-rich-quick advice before pivoting to crypto with uneven results. In 2022, Mr. Harrow urged a room full of crypto enthusiasts to invest in the currency Terra USD, calling it, quote, one of the coolest assets in history. The coin imploded a month later, erasing billions of dollars in wealth. Mr. Harrow's most recent venture with Mr. Folkman was a crypto platform called Doe Finance, which was hacked in July, leading to the theft of $2 million. It's not clear exactly how the pair earned the Trump's trust, but Steve Witkoff said last year that he met them through his son and then introduced them to the family. On the live stream introducing World Liberty, Donald Trump Jr. hailed the men as first-class financial minds. Quote, you could put them in a boardroom at Goldman Sachs and they're going to smoke the people in the room, he said. In October, Mr. Harrow and Mr. Folkman got to work on the company's first initiative, selling a new cryptocurrency, which it called WLFI, with the goal of 300 million in sales. These coins would be different from Trump, the so-called meme coin that spiked in January after Mr. Trump marketed it to his followers before it abruptly crashed. Now, this is part of a larger article that gets into how basically, in addition to giving Middle Eastern countries a way to bribe Trump for favorable deals, they've also been shaking down other crypto companies by approaching them with the proposition, okay, so this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. You're going to buy $100 million worth of the Trump coin, okay? And what we're going to do is we're then going to buy $20 million worth of yours. Well, why would you do that, right? We're getting away with 80 million. Because you know what? That's like an endorsement from us that your coin is good. You're going to make so much money off your involvement with us that it's worth $80 million.
Right.
So they're going around and doing this shakedown on all of these different crypto companies right now. Very, very mafiosi. All right. So Chris Murphy has really made this his personal mission. He's been doing very good work on this. So here he is breaking down specifically the Tether coin side of this, the side that's pegged to the dollar.
UAE, the price is somewhere north of $2 billion. Last week, Eric Trump and World Liberty Financial co-founder Zach Witkoff spoke at a conference in Dubai on crypto called Token 2049. As an aside here, it's just so fantastic and bone-chilling how transparent these guys are in their use of public positions to enrich themselves. I'm going to tell the story of Trump's stablecoin and the corruption with the Emiratis, but let's just pause for a second and consider the fact that the Trump family could have partnered with anybody in the world on their new crypto venture, World Liberty Financial. But of all the people in the world to partner with on this new crypto venture, they chose the son of Trump's Middle East envoy. Trump's Middle East envoy, the guy who's making all the decisions on U.S. policy in the Middle East, just to make it crystal clear to the Gulf countries that when they deal with World Liberty Financial, Trump's crypto venture, that they are dealing directly with the people responsible for making U.S. policy in the Middle East. It's just stunning. Literally, the sons of the president and the sons of the Middle East envoy running a crypto venture and then going directly into the Middle East in order to find their first investment. And guess what? Miracle, they found it. MGX, an investment firm backed by the Emirati government at this conference, announced that they had looked at all the crypto companies in the world that they could partner with to invest $2 billion in the crypto exchange Binance, and they selected, wait for it, drum roll, the company run by the sons of the President of the United States and the U.S. Middle East envoy. $2 billion. Now, World Liberty's role in this transaction is not that complicated. It's kind of similar to a bank. MGX, this Emirati firm, deposits $2 billion with the firm and in return receives the stablecoin to be used on these crypto exchanges. The firm holds on to these dollars, invests them, and keeps the profits for themselves. So the Trump-Witkoff company just gets basically a gift of capital. And if they just use that $2 billion to invest in treasury bonds, it would profit around $85 million a year from these investments alone. And the money goes directly to Trump, just directly to Trump. It's literally not complicated. Emiratis, World Liberty Financial, Donald Trump. This isn't 1990s Louisiana. Nobody's hiding it. On World Liberty's website, they say an entity affiliated with Donald J. Trump owns 60% of the equity in the company. And because of this deal, Trump and Witkoff can further capitalize because Trump's stablecoin just became the fifth most valuable stablecoin in the world because of the Emirati investment.
Okay. So the Emiratis, in order to finance a deal, bought their Tether coin. They're going to use that Tether coin to finance their investment into Binance, a company whose CEO did time for fraud in the U.S. Trump's organization gets that $2 billion, theoretically parks it in treasuries, makes $85 million a year off passive interest on that money, right? Okay, so this week, the New York Times did an article that got a lot of attention about a company in China who it looks like basically a cutout for the owners of TikTok, same owners, no income, 8 employees, committed $300 million to Trump coin.
New report in the New York Times, there's a new connection to the president's cryptocurrency plans. Here's the headline: tiny company with China ties announces big purchase of Trump cryptocurrency. It's a fascinating story. The Times reports that, quote, the firm, which produces content for TikTok, recorded no revenue last year, but it announced this week that a mysterious stock sale would allow it to invest heavily in the Trump meme coin.
Okay, nothing to see there. You want to know how bad this is? You want to know how corrupt this is? This is so corrupt that it has drawn the negative attention of Trump outlet, the New York Post. Well, Murdoch outlet, but Trump supporting outlet, the New York Post. How Trump's family-linked crypto deal are threatening a Hunter Biden-style scandal at the White House. New York Post. New York Post is reporting this. You know why I think they're reporting this? Because the crypto people are starting to get mad about it. Why are the crypto people getting mad about it? Because it's causing enormous backlash. They wanted to use Trump to normalize and mainstream their industry. They're trying to go. The crypto industry right now is Michael Corleone trying to go legit, and this guy's making them look bad.
Yeah, they're doing for crypto what John Gotti did for the New York City steakhouse scene. You know.
On the live stream introducing World Liberty, Donald Trump Jr. pushed back on concerns about the crypto deals in a statement. I'm a private citizen who has been a businessman and serial investor my entire adult life. Unlike Hunter Biden, who temporarily put down his crack pipe and started doing business once his father was sworn in as VP. Trump Jr. said. It really is a reality TV presidency. The left-wing media deceptively conflates Hunter Biden attempting to sell access to my father's office to influence government policy with my work building businesses and investing in American companies, endeavors that have nothing to do with influencing government policy. One recent analysis by Fortune found that crypto holdings now account for nearly 40% of Trump's overall net worth, or the equivalent of $2.9 billion. Last week, the Genius Act, a landmark bill that would establish federal rules for stablecoins, was shot down in the Senate, with several Democrats citing Trump and World Liberty Financial as the reason they couldn't support the legislation. This is why you're seeing this in the Post, because a lot of industry leaders are pissed because it looked like that legislation was going to pass. And Trump pushed this so far being the greedy pig that he and his family are. They just couldn't stay within reasonable bounds of plausible deniability. They had to make the corruption and the bribery opportunity that this presented so blatant that nobody could vote for this. They made normalizing and legalizing the crypto industry toxic from being on the verge of their great victory that they've been seeking for so many years. Now he set them back, arguably, to square one.
Well, this is the danger inherent to that whole industry, which is like eventually it's going to attract people who are just going to take it to such an extreme so as to expose it as a whole. Right. Now, the president of the United States, that's a little beyond even what you would expect in that way. Right? Like you're taking it even past what the wildest extreme could conceivably be if you were, an investor in this industry going back, 2-3 years. I mean, who knew this would happen? But yeah, bringing quite a lot of heat on it now. A lot of heat on it now. Like, it's one thing to get a big endorser, right? It's another thing to have that endorser make such a loud spectacle that exposes the opportunities for this kind of corruption that are, I won't say unique to crypto, but at this moment in time, they are somewhat unique to crypto because it's such a Wild West environment, right? Right. And so you have somebody come in and take advantage of that in this way at this early stage of the game. Yeah, it's kind of like a big turd in the punch bowl.
I think because of the liquidity of crypto, it is unique. There is nothing else you could do this with. Like we in the first part of this saga, I covered the Trump Hotel, which was kind of the prelude to this, right? Figuring out how his family business could profit in a way that would be technically legal, but clear bribery. And, that was building on the Clinton Foundation model. And sure, he didn't invent it, but because he comes from this real estate background, that type of business, that's how he thinks. Like, that's what you're seeing here. Like, well, how do we get rents? How do we get rents out of the presidency? And it'll go back into the Trump parent organization, and that money will be there when I get out of the White House. But technically, we're not running afoul of the law because I'm not taking the money now. Right? It's going in an organization that I'm not running, that I'm not involved. My kids are involved in it. Like, your kids being involved in it is a benefit in and of itself. Like, even if you were not going to profit from it later, which he clearly is. Crypto, though, like real estate, you can't just buy and sell real estate.
Oh, sure. Yeah, of course.
Right? Like, this is the money can move with the speed of light.
Well, especially now that it's relatively unregulated. That's what I mean. Like, especially at this moment in time. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's, I think, Trump having had we saw it at the top, a reasonable skepticism of crypto based on valid reasons. And if you look at it, those tweets are not crazy like his tweets usually are. They're not so erratic. They're very measured and clear without all the all caps, only a couple times. And I think somebody sat him down, somebody like Justin Sun, who promised to explain it to him. Maybe not him, but somebody like him sat him down and explained to him, Mr. President, do you understand? If you set up your own coin and you were the president, it wouldn't be illegal and everyone's going to buy the coin?
100%. 100%. That's what happened. 100%. And you don't have to tell him twice. When you tell him there's an opportunity to make that kind of money fast but for doing nothing, of course, he's going to jump on it. Right. Absolutely. 100%. Dominic Morrow, this is a funny super chat. I like this one. So the doctor says, Mr. Biden, you have cancer and dementia. Biden says, well, at least I don't have cancer. It's a good one. I like that. Thank you, Dominic. Appreciate that. That's funny.
That was a good one.
Well done. Yes. Brad Gilbert, thanks for $2. Massie shows all the fake MAGA influencers, Inc. Trump. Thank you. Michael Castillo says, good afternoon, gentlemen. In terms of Israel, no matter what happens, we must continue maximum pressure to force change. They can hide from it or run from it. I love you all. Free Palestine. Thank you, Michael Castillo. Appreciate that
Thank
very
you.
much. Eric Husseau says they are genociding Christians too. I guess they are the wrong kind of Christians, the original ones. Thank you. Yes, Eric Husseau, appreciate that.
Man, I just shared a video that was from like 30 years ago that was Palestinian Christians talking about how the IDF was killing them.
Oh, yeah. No, I believe that. Stoop Sign says, I went to high school with a pimp with the surname Massie. His main girl got pregnant at 15 from her boyfriend and not a John, though. Interesting. Thank you, Stoop Sign. Killer Hitton says, Keaton, I've noticed you mentioning Stewart Airport multiple times during my listening tenure. Are you familiar with the role it may have played in 9/11? Well, I know that they diverted a lot of New York City-bound flights to Stewart that day for fairly obvious reasons. Beyond that, I'm not sure. Is there another conspiratorial angle there? I haven't heard it, but maybe there is one. But I do know that, yes, because of its proximity to New York City, a lot of New York City-bound flights were diverted there, as many as they could. It's a very small airport. Okay. We will move right on along here. So let's actually, while we're paused here, let's take a little moment to shout out our supporters. Sorry, I should have brought that up earlier. There we are. What's going on there? All right, perfect. All right, folks. So, hey, if you like what we do here, one way you could help us do more of it is by becoming a member, and you can do so by going to one of those 3 links at the top of the page there, dudissidents.com/Patreons/Substack or /locals. Benefits of joining include your name up in lights here on the patron scroll, a bonus movie club live stream every month, complete with a call-in Q&A after the film. You also will have access to our post game, which we're going to do next week. We just have to figure out a cool day where we're going to pioneer our new feature for paid members, which is a post game. So we'll do a couple of bonus segments after one of the live streams and then take your calls after that. That will be in lieu of the second live stream per month, because that was going to be very hard to schedule given the Misty Winston show now on Wednesday nights. So that makes it a lot easier to schedule around that, because we wouldn't want to do a patron show on the same night Misty's going. So that will be next week. So that'll be a lot of fun. So make sure you are signed up. You also get, like I said, call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday night. You get live stream access to our full-length pre-recorded interviews, as well as full-length ad-free replays of every live stream, which are emailed to your inbox the day after they air live. That's a feature people are liking a lot. So if you miss a stream or you only catch part of a stream and you don't want to watch the replay with the ad breaks, you get an ad-free version of every single stream emailed to you the day after it airs here. So if you miss anything, you get to watch it back just as though you're watching live. So that's dudissidents.com/Patreon, dudissidents.com/Substack, and dudissidents.com/locals. If you're watching on Rumble right now, you can join via locals by clicking that bright red join button underneath the video player. You guys are the backbone of the show, our members. Thank you very much, of course, for your continued support. All right, folks, we are up to 711 likes in the YouTube channel. All righty, so we will move right on along here. Okay, folks, this is a story with some recent developments here. So Trump's sanctions on ICC prosecutor have halted tribunals' work. That's right. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor has lost access to his email, and his bank accounts have been frozen. The Hague-based court's American staffers have been told that if they travel to the U.S., they risk arrest. Some non-governmental organizations have stopped working with the ICC, and the leaders of one won't even reply to emails from court officials. Those are just some of the hurdles facing court staff since U.S. President Donald Trump in February slapped sanctions on its chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, according to interviews with current and former ICC officials, international lawyers, and human rights advocates. One reason the court has been hamstrung is that it relies heavily on contractors and non-governmental organizations who, according to these sanctions, are, of course, now barred from interacting with the ICC. And by the way, it broke right before we went on the air. The UN has just said that despite Israel's proclamations of allowing limited aid into Gaza, no aid at this moment has reached a single Palestinian. So much for that. So we will have to follow up on that, but that is what reports are saying. And meanwhile, it's the ICC who is being sanctioned by the United States. Those businesses and groups have curtailed work on behalf of the court because they were concerned about being targeted by U.S. authorities, according to current, and former ICC staffers. Microsoft, for example, canceled Khan's email address, forcing the prosecutor to move to Proton Mail, a Swiss email provider, ICC staffers said. His bank accounts in his home country of the UK have been blocked. Microsoft did not respond to a request for comment. Well, Microsoft has been in the news this week anyway. Earlier this week, Microsoft says it provided AI to Israeli military for the war, but denies use to harm people in Gaza. No, of course not. Microsoft acknowledged Thursday that it sold advanced artificial intelligence and cloud computing services to the Israeli military during the war in Gaza and aided in efforts to locate and rescue Israeli hostages. But the company also said it has found no evidence to date that its Azure platform and AI technologies were used to target or harm people in Gaza. The unsigned blog post on Microsoft's corporate website appears to be the company's first public acknowledgement of its deep involvement in the war. Microsoft said Thursday that employee concerns and media reports had prompted the company to launch an internal review and hire an external firm to undertake additional fact-finding. The statement did not identify the outside firm or provide a copy of its report. They basically said, yeah, we looked into it, and turns out we're just helping with some intelligence matters and some hostage freeing matters, but we're sure none of this technology has been used to do any harm to any Palestinians, of course. But here is an organization here, not much of an organization, I suppose, but a group of workers who have banded together. No Azure for apartheid. So these are Microsoft workers who are protesting the company's pro-Israel orientation, and they recently disrupted a conference, shouting down the Microsoft CEO. So let's take a look at this.
To VS Code, just a couple of weeks ago,
Satya, how about you show them how Microsoft is killing Palestinians? How about you show them how Israeli war crimes are powered by Azure? As a Microsoft worker, I refuse.
Are you having a seat right here? Sorry. Are you having a seat right here? Oh, then you can have
So that's Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. They just put out an alternate angle of this, which is a little bit longer, with some of the aftermath of this intervention.
And when it comes to VS Code, just a couple of weeks ago,
Satya, how about you show them how Microsoft is killing Palestinians? How about you show them how Israeli war crimes are powered by Azure? As a Microsoft worker, I refuse to be complicit in this genocide. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Okay, I'm taking them right down the escalators. If you guys want to take them out, we'll take your phone.
Why are they taking the phone?
We'll get her. You get it before you pull me out?
See, that's what I learned.
Can I take my phone?
That's what I learned in my
put it in
first
your pocket so it
intervention.
doesn't
Don't
get lost.
bring anything
Can I
they
put it
can
in my
hold.
pocket, please?
Exactly.
I'll do it. Put it in your pocket.
No Azure for apartheid! Israeli war crimes run on Azure! You all need to do your own research! Look into it!
Well, they were not done. Day 2 of the conference is apparently going on right now, and they just posted this since we went live. So we will take a look at this. They were undeterred. Here they are back for a second day. So here they are. This time they are shouting down the executive vice president of Microsoft Core AI. So let's take a look at this video right here.
Jay, you're complicit in the genocide in Gaza. My people are suffering because of you. How dare you? How dare you talk about AI? My people are suffering. Cut ties with Israel. Cut ties. No answer for apartheid. No answer for apartheid. No answer for apartheid. No answer for apartheid. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine.
So there's, like I said, second day in a row. So this is their Twitter page. It's a small group, obviously, so I encourage you to go follow them. No As for Apartheid is the handle. They are Microsoft workers demanding that Microsoft terminate all Azure contracts and partnership with the Israeli military and government. Sign their petition. So here's their website. We won't read the petition in full, but we'll read their core demands. We refuse to be complicit. Join the growing No Tech for Apartheid movement and demand that Microsoft live up to its own purported ethical values by ending its direct and indirect complicity in Israeli apartheid and genocide. Join us alongside students, teachers, activists, cultural workers, healthcare workers, and trade unions, alongside the International Court of Justice, alongside ordinary people in the streets and Palestinians worldwide, in building a new future where Palestine is free. And their four demands: IOF, Israeli Occupation Forces, as they are more accurately described, in my view, obviously, end Microsoft's complicity in Israeli genocide and apartheid by terminating all Azure contracts and partnerships with the Israeli military and government. Disclose all ties, make all ties to the Israeli state, military, and tech industry publicly known, including weapons manufacturers and contractors. Conduct a transparent and independent audit of Microsoft's technology, contracts, services, and investments. Call for a ceasefire, obviously self-explanatory, and protect employees. Ensure the safety of Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, and allied employees by protecting pro-Palestinian speech, actions, and fundraising initiatives on internal company platforms. So 2 points here. Number one, when it comes to speech, this is an example of a boycott action that, if a guy like Michael Lawler had his way, would be illegal if, say, the United Nations endorsed this group. So if the United Nations endorsed this movement, then it would be illegal for us to promote this group. Thankfully, that failed, and so we are in the clear for now. Number two, yeah, what they're talking about here, I mean, this is an example of, even though this is not an explicitly Marxist or communist-oriented movement, this is Marxism. This is how you influence policies. Workers organizing at their place of work. That is ultimately one avenue, and I would argue it's a pretty powerful one. Microsoft put out this statement in response to pressure from groups like this. That statement was obviously not to their satisfaction. It was not to the satisfaction of the Associated Press even, right? And so this is the kind of pressure that you have to put on companies like this, right? And this is why it's so important to have a government that will allow for the exercise of free speech, i.e. advocating boycotts like this, right? I mean, Microsoft has to understand that people are not going to want to do business with them if they are providing this kind of support to the IDF. That's totally legal. That is totally constitutional. And those liberties have to be protected to make this kind of organizing possible, because this kind of organizing is powerful. It does work. We've seen it work. And so good on these guys for doing this. This is the kind of stuff you have to do. You have to organize your workplace. That is a powerful place. That things can happen there, irrespective of who wins what election. In terms of on the government side, yeah, you have to make sure that you have enough people in there. Thankfully, knock on wood, this time there were enough MAGA hardliners to shut that anti-boycott bill down. Because what if an international body endorses a movement like this, and all of a sudden that movement is criminalized in the United States, even with our codified First Amendment? What happens when they criminalize movements like this? Gets very dangerous very quickly. but good on these workers and good on them for going right back and doing this 2 days in a row.
This is really, if you look at this struggle and the backlash to it, it's really an excellent example of the way that Zionism has weaponized the premises of wokeness to support this eminently settler colonial project, because part of the reason that a lot of people over the last decade, at least, I feel, have been able to promote causes that might superficially resemble classic civil rights or social justice kind of causes while being really off-putting and repulsive. The reason they've been able to dominate the conversation, it's something he says in there's a movie about Basquiat, and the voiceover narration at the beginning, which is probably unfairly dismissive of Basquiat, but the overall point I think is true. Nobody wants to be the person who didn't recognize Van Gogh. If you get an art history degree, the whole degree is basically about all the critics who got it wrong in the past. So it makes people not want to say no to anything, right? They don't want to say no to anything. I think all the images of the authorities being so wrong about segregation and other issues in the country, nobody, even CEOs, they don't want to be that person. With this one exception. And you couldn't think of an example that is more genuinely analogous to the fights against the Vietnam War, the fights against segregation, the fights against misogyny. You couldn't think of anything that is more spiritually aligned with that than this. And people, CEOs of these tech companies are notoriously libs, right? They like to see themselves as enlightened oligarchs, as David Brooks's book gets into, the bobos, right? They see themselves as an enlightened, cool ruling class, right? Certainly not ones to be Bull Connor in that kind of an exchange, right? So how do you get them to be Bull Connor when that is such a core value of theirs, not to be that person? Well, claim that the people who are the Bull Connors are the protesters, right? Because they're anti-Semitic for being anti-Zionist. Like, this whole thing doesn't work without the Zionists making that claim. Without that, the whole thing falls apart. They're completely dependent on that equation. And that's why they so furiously try to pass legislation like Lawler was pushing, because they know this. They know that you disconnect that in the public mind, the jig is up.
That's right. Yeah, Zionism, this is a good phrase. Maybe we can popularize this. Zionism is wokeness with a lobby. That's what happens when wokeness gets a lobby, right? You think wokesters are annoying. Yeah, they're annoying. When they have a lobby, that's when it becomes very dangerous, right? And that's what this is. This is just organized, concentrated, wokeness in that respect, censoriousness, shutting down conversations with charged accusations that do not apply to the, current conversation. That's what they're doing. That's the only reason why you could ever even begin to attempt to justify something like this. You can't win on the merits, these kinds of arguments. They just had NYU. A kid just got his diploma taken away because in his speech he gave a pro-Palestine speech at the graduation ceremony, and the dean says it was out of place to give such a one-sided political view. Oh, really? So if he gave a one-sided view of any one of these issues that you guys in academia embrace as virtuous liberal issues, you would call that one-sided and revoke his
trans
diploma?
Women are women.
Yeah, what if he gave a pro-trans speech? Right. Or an anti-racist speech in any other context? I would argue a pro-Palestine speech is an anti-racist speech in the best sense of the phrase.
Well,
but what if he
that's
did
how
something
the Zionists
like that?
have completely flipped reality.
Right.
Because now
exactly.
that's supposed to be a racist speech.
Right. Exactly. Right. And this is what I mean. Wokeness with a lobby, right? Censoriousness with a lobby, right? You could distort things like that. when it comes to that. Well, when it comes to this as well, Microsoft, I'm sure this was one of the companies that hang, the Black Lives Matter flag in the Pride Month and all of that. And look at this, dragging these people out. Clearly, some of these people, Arabs and Muslims themselves, protesting the murder of their people with the assist from this AI. We've covered Lavender AI, Palantir. Well, Microsoft too. Like, these ties run very deep, and they go and say something about it, and look at how they are treated, and look at how invisibilized their movement is by the mainstream. I mean, I just heard of these guys this morning. They only have 1,800 followers. That's why I say go and give them a follow and go and spread the word, because students organizing on campus is powerful to an extent, and that's great, and we encourage that. But workers organizing their workplace, that's next level. That's where it really is at, and so good on them. All right. Let's see. David Cody Pepper says, "Why is Keaton so handsome?" Oh, gee, thanks for that. Appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. I don't know. Maybe it's when I shave. Maybe I should keep my shaving schedule up. I don't know. So
it's because he's unattainable.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my secret. That's the secret, is that I'm unattainable. Exactly.
That's the secret sauce.
That's the secret sauce, right? Going to email you guys an article on Biden almost causing a nuclear war in 22. Vito P reminded me they estimated the chance of nuclear weapons being used at 50%. I shit you not. Wow. Yes, thank you.
Dear.
Do that, please.
All right.
Do they think they will make a blockbuster movie of Jake Tapper's new book? Who plays who? Yeah, I don't know. Who would play Jake Tapper? That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that. Noah Goop. Could be an interstellar segment in the context of a demented man with a death sentence being in charge of the nukes. Yes, there you go. Shady Deal says, "Here's a few bucks. I think Shiloh and the kids are doing fine this week." Well, thanks, Shady Deals. Appreciate that. They have all their groceries bought for the week, right? Leftovers. My favorite stable coins for betting on horses. Thank you, Stoop Sign. Appreciate that. All right, final segment of the day. Then we will take our final super chats and Rumble rants of the day, and then we will close the lights on the stream. Misty Winston show tomorrow with Andy Worthington, who is one of the best and most prominent Guantanamo Bay activists in this space. So that's at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, and then we are moving the time slot back to 8 starting next week. But tomorrow at 7 p.m. on Rumble only. All right, go ahead.
All right. Well, especially next week, we'll really be competing against ourselves.
Yes, next week we will be competing against ourselves, as I am likely, it's not in stone yet, but I am likely fill-in hosting the Jimmy Dore Show next week, Wednesday and Friday. Jimmy will be live doing comedy in Buffalo, and so Russell will be at the show, so he will not be co-hosting with me. I'll be holding that down myself. Probably, almost certainly. We have to confirm that finally, but yes, that's almost certainly a go.
I've been talking to Jimmy. Our plan is we're going to live stream it and heckle him to the live audience.
Well, I was thinking maybe we could live stream the comedy set, and that would take half the work off my hands. We'd just be like, all right, now Jimmy Dore live in Buffalo. Take it away.
That's what they call money for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I seem to remember a promise that I really took to heart. I think a lot of people took to heart. Some people took it so to heart, they thought there was going to be a whole revolution of peace when Trump came into the White House. He's a revolutionary. He promised he was going to end the Russia-Ukraine war right away.
You got to settle. I would tell Zelensky, you got to settle. I would tell one, you're going to load up with money. I'd tell the other, you're not going to get any money. I would get a settlement in 24 hours. I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy. That deal would be easy. Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly. 24 hours.
How are you going to do that?
4 hours.
Putin and I get Zelensky together. I know them both very well. Before I arrive at the Oval Office,
This is becoming a very
shortly
long
after I
day.
win the presidency, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It'll take 24 hours.
Settled. 24
You're going
hours.
to load up with money. I tell the other, you're not going to get any money.
That's it. Just threaten them with money. That's it. Load them up. Withdraw. Yeah. 24 hours. Easy, cheesy, Japanesey. Am I still allowed to say that?
Yeah.
So he had a 2-hour conversation with Putin this week, and sounds a lot different from this guy. Let's see what he said.
Red line in your head of what would cause you to back away? And
Yeah, in my head, but not something I'm going to announce. But yeah, definitely in my head I do, yeah. Because this isn't our war. This is not my war. This is not the war. I mean, we got ourselves entangled in something that we shouldn't have been involved in. And we would have been a lot better off, and maybe the whole thing would have been better off, because it can't be much worse. It's a real mess. It's a death trap. So I think that, yeah, I would say I do have a certain line, but I don't want to say what that line is, because I think it makes the negotiation even more difficult than it is. Yes, please.
Mr. President.
Not our war. Not our war. He went all Rambo about it. It's not my war.
Right,
I didn't start this war.
You mentioned that you...
Let's see what else he had to say about this.
You mentioned that you believe Putin wants peace, but he just attacked Ukraine yesterday. So what makes you think that he wants peace?
Well, he's in a war, you know. I mean, nobody said don't. They're fighting. They're attacking each other. And people are dying all the time. He's in a war. He's fighting a war. Nobody said he was going to stop. I think, is it terrible? Yeah, it's terrible. I do. I think it's terrible.
Can you wait on President Biden? President Biden was diagnosed with...
So it's not our war. And, sure, Putin, after we spoke, continued to attack Ukraine. It's a war. What do you want? Not our war. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do about it? Settle it in 24 hours? That's crazy talk. So this is what he truthed out after the call. Just completed my 2-hour call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. I believe it went very well. Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. The conditions for that will be negotiated between the two parties, as it can only be, because they know details of a negotiation that nobody else would be aware of. The tone and spirit of the conversation were excellent. If it wasn't, I would say so now rather than later. Russia wants to do large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over, and I agree. There is a tremendous opportunity for Russia to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. Its potential is unlimited. Likewise, Ukraine can be a great beneficiary on trade in the process of rebuilding its country. Negotiations between Russia and Ukraine will begin immediately. I have so informed President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, President Emmanuel Macron of France, Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy, Chancellor Friedrich Merz of Germany, and President Alexander Stubb of Finland during a call with me immediately after the call with President Putin. The Vatican, as represented by the Pope, has stated that it would be very interested in hosting the negotiations. Let the process begin. Okay, so most of that is bullshit or half-truths or maybe or rumors. But the idea that they're about to sit down and settle this at the Vatican, the core premise of this, is bullshit. The spirit of it, that basically for Trump, he sees this as bad business and thinks he could do business with Putin and, clearly likes him better than he likes Zelensky. That core seems to be true. So this is what Putin came out and said about it just a little bit. Good evening. My colleagues asked me to say a few words about the results of our telephone conversation with the president of the United States. Indeed, this conversation took place and lasted more than 2 hours. I would like to note that it was very informative and very frank, and overall, in my opinion, very useful in this regard. Okay, so it sounds like it was a warm conversation. There's actually reporting that Trump brought up the fact that they were allies in World War II and talked about how much Russia had done in that war. So it sounds like, yeah, it was a good conversation in that sense. So this is some reporting from the Washington Post. Trump backs off ceasefire after call with Putin, letting fighting continue. A phone call between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin shut down an effort to pressure Russia into an immediate ceasefire and instead opened the way for continued fighting while lengthy negotiations take place, much to the consternation of Ukraine and its European allies Tuesday. Trump's abandonment of new sanctions on Russia indicated that he may be stepping away from involvement in the talks, something that his team has been flagging for weeks. European leaders say they had originally been planning with U.S. officials to levy new sanctions on Russia if it did not declare an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. But despite Trump's exhortations for months that the fighting must stop immediately, in the course of Monday's phone call, Putin managed to add a new delaying element to the process: the need for each side to draft a memorandum on the terms of a future peace treaty, a move that may leave Ukraine vulnerable to Russian aggression, I'm going to put quotes there, for months or even years. Russia has laid down harsh conditions for any ceasefire, including that Ukraine be barred from any military recruiting or Western weapons assistance, which is unacceptable to Kyiv because it would enable Moscow to unilaterally rearm in preparation for a new attack. I will throw in this article, funny enough, didn't bring it up, but I know one of the biggest demands they have is the denazification of Ukraine. Now, they might not have brought it up because of their own journalistic biases, because whenever this is mentioned in the corporate media, it's dismissed as crazy talk, even though we've all seen with our own eyes how many of their troops sport Nazi insignia. They're worse than Pete Hegseth over there. So Tommy Tuberville laid it out straight. And I don't think he would say this if this isn't basically a kind of consensus view in Trump land. That's a view I happen to agree with.
Vladimir Putin now he's to the point where he's taken so much land, he's making so much progress. Why would he make a deal? He has got the cards in his hand. Biden had the cards in his hand very early, but now we've lost all the cards, and Vladimir Putin is going to want a lot from the Ukrainians. He's going to want a lot in terms of land, the things that are going on there in terms of possibly even Odessa. He's going to want Crimea, but he's going to want NATO to stay away from his borders. And I can't blame him for that. 100%, we don't need to be on their borders, and he's asked that for years.
So, wow. This was something, okay, the Trump administration has definitely shifted the conversation, because this was something you couldn't say 2 years ago. You couldn't say it. I mean, only people in our space were saying this.
Right.
You absolutely could not say, yeah, he's been asking for that for years, and it's a reasonable request not to have NATO at his borders. That was, you were the Antichrist if you said this not very long ago. So just to close this out, because I think this is very interesting. So after talking about how they had a warm exchange about their past, fighting together in World War II, it closes with this. Konstantin Kosachev, chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Russia's Federation Council, the upper legislative chamber, said Russia and the U.S. had emerged as negotiation partners against Europe and Ukraine. Quote, based on the results of the conversation between Putin and Trump, there is a feeling that two consultative and negotiating groups have finally, but not irrevocably, formed: Russian American and Ukrainian European. The first is discussing the prospects for achieving peace. The second, the possibility of continuing the war, he wrote on social media. That is a very interesting statement. And it does kind of seem that way. And this is where, look, I do feel that there is a tendency to overhype Trump's claims to be a man of peace. But we said during the election, gun to head, we'd have to pick Trump over Harris because these guys are going to march us right into World War III. There is absolutely no doubt that under a Harris avatar for the deep state administration, we would have worked with the Europeans to escalate tensions with Russia and to continue to arm Ukraine to the teeth. Now, don't get it twisted. Under Trump, they have continued to send arms to Ukraine. They have continued to send money to Ukraine. They haven't completely shut that down as Trump suggested he would do to force a peace. He has not gone that far. But is he taking a tack where, at the very least, he seems committed to defusing tensions with nuclear-armed Russia? And it was very clear in his first term, and it continues to be clear now. He sees Russia as a business opportunity, and he doesn't understand why we should be fighting with them over things that don't really concern us. I think that's his basic disposition. If he had his way, I think we would just walk away from this whole thing and leave it to him. And honestly, I mean, from the way they're describing the outcome of these conversations, it almost sounds that way. Now, the Europeans are talking about doing their own sanctions. They were hoping that the United States would come out of this talk with Putin, demanding a ceasefire, or else we're going to get together and impose higher sanctions, which clearly he's not planning on doing. They're talking about doing their own sanctions, but there's only so much impact that's going to have. Look, this is going to end with Russia demanding to keep the territories it's conquered in the east, at the very least, the Russophone provinces that were really the subject of the dispute, and demanding, obviously, that Ukraine never join NATO. There be no NATO troops there, no Western involvement in Ukraine. That's how it's going to end. You could get there fast, you could get there slow. Zelensky seems determined to try to just keep dragging this out. But Trump is, to his credit, slowly but surely, it seems, withdrawing U.S. involvement. Obviously claiming in his blustery, bombastic, almost honest liar kind of way that he was going to end that war in 24 hours was pretty hyperbolic and pretty absurd. Is he turning down the temperature in a way that it would not have gotten turned down, quite the opposite, if the election had gone another way? Yes, absolutely. I think he is ratcheting down the likelihood of World War III, at least coming out of that region. And, the Post is spinning this as a negative thing, but they're going to spin that as a negative thing. This stuff with the Vatican, the article got into it a little bit. I mean, it seems like the Vatican made the offer. It doesn't mean that we're anywhere near what Trump's post suggests, that, next week Putin and Zelensky are going to be sitting down with the Pope. They're nowhere near that, but it's being floated.
Well, I mean, all political biases aside of the Washington Post, you have to just ask yourself a very simple question, and this is not a hard question to ask. It's not a hard scenario to envision. Let's say Putin did demand a ceasefire. Let's say Trump, let's say Trump did demand a ceasefire in that phone call. Putin says no.
Yeah,
well,
what happens then?
What are you going to do? It's not like we could do anything about that.
Sanctions. That worked out so well last time.
Yeah, exactly. There's no play past that point anyway. Okay,
Right.
so what you want? You wanted him to demand a ceasefire? If he did, Putin would have said, no, can't do that now.
Mhm.
Okay, well, then what's next?
Yeah.
Right?
Dump more
Like,
money and arms into Ukraine.
You're right. It's easy to spill a lot of ink and get a nice virtue signal out of it. And if you're the Washington Post, I guess there's some efficacy in them doing that for their own purposes. But beyond that, what are you saying? What are you saying? The bottom line is that, yes, at this point, this war is going to end on Russia's terms. And, didn't have to be that way. Russia gave you plenty of chances at an off-ramp that early on.
2022.
In which they would have given a lot less, right?
Yep.
But now they feel like they've lost tens of thousands of men for this. What can they do? How can they justify it to their people if they come back with less than what they want now?
What incentive do they have? They're winning. They can just keep going and take the country, theoretically.
Yeah, right, exactly. They're not doing that. The offer was on the table well into the fighting. Hey, just agree to the terms that were laid out before the fighting started, and we'll call this off. You had ample opportunity to take that, and you had an administration that was so psychotic that they convinced Ukraine, not just ours, but European leaders as well, convinced Ukraine, no, if you fight this, you can win this. And once again, you're seeing a situation where the anti-war people were right from jump. This all could have been avoided. At this point, they're going to get a worse deal. I mean, I don't have a reason to lament that or celebrate that. It's not my fight. But that's what it is. Like that, and that's not changing, no matter what the attitude is of our president. Okay, could Donald Trump have been less chummy? Yeah, but who cares? What difference would it make?
Right.
Putin is dictating the terms at this point. That's just the reality, whether you like it or not. It doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't matter to me whether anyone likes it or doesn't. What matters to me is avoiding World War III. And as a humanitarian, I think thousands of people are being killed for no reason every single week. We want it to stop as soon as possible. And I wish we could get a ceasefire right now. I wish we could. I wish those terms that were available to Ukraine at the start of this were available right now. I wish that were true. How many times do you want me to say that? It doesn't matter how many times I say it, or how much I wish that were true. The fact of the matter is, it's not true anymore. And so now you have to do the best with what you have to resolve this as quickly as possible with minimal loss of life. And there's nothing Donald Trump could have told Vladimir Putin on that phone call that would have expedited this.
Right.
Nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, the Washington Post would like it if he did what Biden did and what Harris would have done.
Right.
Right. More sanctions, more arms to Ukraine, more money. You notice there's no talk about sending NATO troops in like there was before the election.
Right.
They're really starting to prepare people for the idea of sending in NATO. So, yeah, man, hey, I will give him credit. Yeah, did he overpromise and underdeliver? Sure, but you know what? The other side would have delivered World War III, so honestly, I'll take it.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, you can't really complain on that score, relative to the alternative, at least. All right. What do we got here? Gopnik Otaku. So when are we storming the Winter Palace? Thank you, Gopnik. Wasim Garani says, my mom and I just signed the No Azar petition. Oh, great. Have you seen Colombia acting president being booed and jeered at her speech for 2025 graduation ceremony? No, that must be like breaking.
No.
Yeah, I didn't see that. No, that's great. We'll cover that on Thursday for sure. Artie Blarty Fart Blast, thanks for the $7.99. Whoopi Goldberg as Jake Tapper to be directed by Rachel Zegler. Thank you for that, Artie Blarty Fart Blast. Appreciate that. Furrows Queen says, just watched a vile video of Jerry Seinfeld laughing at a woman saying there are children being slaughtered in Gaza.
I saw that. I saw it when he's getting in his limo.
He's getting in the car, yeah, outside the Knick game, I think. Then I assume it was his son also laughed. I'm disgusted and disappointed. Of course. Yes, I saw that. Stoop sign, Putin celebrates V-Day, Trump celebrates VD Day. Thank you for that, Stoop sign. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, that's our show. We appreciate you hanging out with us this afternoon. Misty Winston, is on at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, and then we will be back here to 12 noon on Thursday, May 22nd. Thanks, everybody, for being here, to our YouTubers, to our Rumblers. Thanks to the mods for keeping the peace in the chat. Smash that like button on the way out. Smash that subscribe button if you're not subscribed on YouTube. Smash that follow button if you are not following us over on Rumble. We'll see you all on Rumble tomorrow night, 7 p.m. for the Misty Winston Show. Back here, 12 p.m. Thursday. Until then, Jolene got one in right before the buzzer. I have a cowbell I'd love to give to Russ for his generous super chats. Just email his Buffalo address. Well, he's not going to be there long enough. We have a P.O. box.
I mean, at this point, there's no.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you. But we do have a P.O. box. I could say you could send it there, but Russ will be back in the city with our cowbell. So, but we do appreciate that. That's a very kind offer. Thank you, Jolene.
Thank you.
But you keep it. You keep it. So if you ever fill in host, you have one.
You know, man, I was in the place I thought would have, because I did my sensory deprivation tank thing yesterday. I felt very gypped. I did not regress to an earlier genetic stage of man's evolution. I feel that Altered States promised me that, and it did not deliver. Fine. Getting a lot of that this week. But yeah, that's like a new agey stuff with the, all the Buddhist bric-a-brac. No bells, man. No bells.
No bells. It was not to be. Thank you for the offer, Jolene. But yeah, Russ will be back in the city soon enough. So by the time it got to him, it would be wasted on him anyway. But thank you for that offer. All right, folks, we're out of here. Misty Winston tomorrow, 7 p.m. We're back Thursday at noon. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us this afternoon. Until we see you next time, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.